What football focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. We're going team by team.
I would be very careful about slinging stuff.
Am I going to get sued?
We go legal on this?
I like football season, and all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live here on a Monday morning. Time to review all the Week 10 NFL action, Sam.
It is.
Yeah. Head-to-head with Good Morning Football, of course. So they've got great ratings this year, I heard. Good Morning Football.
Do they?
They're breaking records, and it's not because of us.
Do we have great ratings too?
We're going up. Good Morning Football's going up. Like, we're all moving up together.
I bet if you look at it in percentage terms, we're kicking their ass.
Yeah, we're probably,
Because they'll be up 25% year on year or whatever. We're killing that.
Yeah, we're like thousands percentage.
I mean, hundreds.
Points. Anyway, we appreciate everybody tuning in early on a Monday morning. A legitimately historic Week 10 in the NFL. 5 games that finished with a walk-off field goal. First time in NFL history.
Yeah.
In over 100 years of NFL history here.
Okay. They were talking that up a lot yesterday.
Downplay it. Go ahead.
I'm just saying people and me seem to have different interpretations of how exciting a walk-off field goal is.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm with you.
You know?
Right?
And I don't know how many, if you multiply it, multiplying a walk-off field goal by 5 doesn't necessarily turn it into something magical for me.
Jeez.
And I don't know if you multiplied it by 16, if it would turn it into something magical for me.
If you're new to the PFF NFL podcast, this is what we do. You may have come out of the week excited about something, and we're going to tell you why you shouldn't be.
Only if the thing sucks. I mean, if the thing was cool, let's dive into it.
Just saying, it was a great week of football, Sam.
Yeah.
Are you ready to go?
Sure.
Speaking of great football, Colts 10, Patriots 6. It was in Germany.
Just in case the Germans thought that they were going to be blessed with nice football all the time, let's give them a little taste of what London's been getting for the last decade.
They got to see over 60 run plays in this game.
Wow.
And that's why there were 16 points in the game. Colts moved to 5-5 with the win. Patriots fall to 2-8. It was a back and forth game early on, and then the scoring stopped for the most part.
Bill Belichick still have a job this morning?
As of now, right? Yes, he does. We could get right into the Patriots' perspective because, again, Bill Belichick's the greatest coach of all time. Job is probably on the line here, if not at the end of the season. Maybe as New England heads into their bye, he benches Mac Jones. Mac Jones has another
again.
Well, I don't think the previous ones weren't really benchings. Can we just we're intelligent here. The previous games, Mac Jones played horribly, but they were getting blown out, and it was mostly let's put the backup in a blowout. This was a legitimate bench. Because I don't know if you would call the previous 2 benchings of Mac Jones. This is a legitimate benching because the Patriots had a game-winning drive opportunity. The previous game-winning drive opportunity, Mac Jones kind of looked flustered, throws a very bad red zone interception. This was after the cameras caught Bill O'Brien screaming at Mac Jones on the sideline.
Now, you, Mr. Context Man, Bill O'Brien has form for this. There are countless video examples of him and Tom Brady screaming at each other on the sideline. So this is something that Bill O'Brien does, apparently to the degree that he's nicknamed the Teapot. Because there's a clip somewhere of, I don't know what the actual show is or the thing that they were creating, but Brady is explaining that they call him the Teapot because when he starts to simmer, it
explodes.
Yeah. So this is a thing that happens.
Oh, so this is not expected behavior.
Yes, it's no different than when he was yelling at Brady, except it's Mac Jones. So and things are going badly. So now everyone's like, oh look, trouble on the sideline.
So the Teapot went off on the sideline. And then Mac Jones throws a very bad red zone interception. And then it became Bailey Zappi time. And down 4, Bailey Zappi trying to lead the comeback, does a little fake spike, chucks it up into coverage. I do think he was expecting a little something else from the receiver. Don't know if that would have mattered anyway. And so it was a game ending. I mean, if he ran the over route instead of stayed up the seam, he's at least at the catch point probably.
Yeah.
Either way, there's 2 defenders in the area, not 3, and game over. Colts get the win, secure the win over in Germany.
They do. Yeah, I don't know that there's a route the receiver could have run that would have made that not a problem. Like, he's throwing it at the safety who's right there, and the best he can hope for is if the guy runs a different route and manages to at least create a collision at the catch point, which is usually not what you're aiming for when it comes to that situation, particularly not when it's like a fake spike, and the idea is you've manufactured some space by the trickery that you've done with the spike thing. There was no space manufactured, and at best you were throwing a contested collision ball midway down the middle of the field with not much time left on the clock.
It wasn't great, but I don't know what the expectations were. Anyway, so New England falls to 2-8, and with Arizona winning, spoiler alert, New England's even closer to perhaps a first or second overall pick here.
Which, God, they might need at this point.
And they really might need. So does Bill Belichick make it through the rest of the season here, Sam?
I think he does for the reasons we discussed previously, which is he has value. Like, even if you decided we don't want him as coach anymore, which is entirely possible given the way this season is going, it doesn't make any sense to kill him now because you can get rid of him. You can trade him. Like, somebody will give you a decent draft pick for Bill Belichick at the end of this season. So why would you get rid of him now? What's the benefit? Like, literally, if it continues to go as badly as it does now, it will help your draft pick for the next guy. And does it really increase the embarrassment factor, which is the only other consideration if you're Robert Kraft? Like, the level of embarrassment you have over the season increases with every loss. But is that actually important? I mean, in the mind of a billionaire, perhaps. But that would seem foolish. That would seem cutting off your nose to spite your face. And a smart billionaire, I don't think, should behave that way.
The one other consideration that we would have said 4 or 5 years ago with Bill Belichick, right? Every time Bill, zigged when everyone else was zagging, we were like, oh, what does he know?
Right.
What is he doing?
Turns out he didn't know anything. It's just Brady.
Yes. I mean, that's probably
maybe that's what he knew. I have Brady, therefore I can zig.
However, 5 or 6 years ago, people would have said, wait, is Bill tanking? Mm-hmm. Is he tanking on purpose?
True.
And it's well orchestrated here.
It's
no, I forgot how to coach.
Masterful tank job.
He's like messing with Mac Jones' mind so he can't even read. Like, Mac's just getting back there and panicking. And it's because Bill's been playing mind games with him.
Belichick is carefully and meticulously destroying the mind of Mac Jones over the course of the season.
He's like, I know you've been told to drop back and read the safeties. I want you to read the defensive tackle. Trust me, I'm Bill Belichick. And he's going to masterfully craft the New England's way up to the first or second pick. Bob Kraft needs to know this, though.
Yes,
right?
You can't do that without informing
Bob,
the owner. Right.
I'm going to tank. It's going to look bad. Stick with me, though.
Here's the plan. Yeah. I intend to embark upon a campaign of mental warfare against our starting quarterback this year. And in doing so, I will get one of the top 2 picks of the draft, which gives me one of the best quarterbacks available in years. Cool? Bob's like, absolutely, Bill. Go nuts.
We're bringing Teapot Pack to really scream at him and everything. We're gonna get after him.
I'll start the ball rolling, and then Teapot's gonna go nuts in the sideline.
Hey, Mac, we're bringing your former coach back. It's gonna be great.
By the end of it, Mac's not even gonna be able to drop back without imploding.
All right. Well, all jokes aside, it's bad enough that this could be true. It's a 2-8 New England Patriots team, and the Colts moved to 5-5.
I like that conspiracy. I think we should push that.
We should roll with that
as a thing.
Every time something bad happens, it's like, Bill's secret genius.
This is the plan.
Still.
This is all part of the master plan.
For Indianapolis, they moved to 5-5 in a suddenly more competitive AFC South, with Jacksonville losing. The Colts 5-5, just a game and a half behind the Jags, and now a half game behind the surging Houston Texans. Of course, we'll talk about those games later, but Colts are lurking around with Gardner Minshew, and Minshew actually played a pretty clean game for the first time in a while here. I know they only scored 10 points, but it was a run-heavy attack, and makes a big throw to Josh Downs, beautiful diving catch to help run out the clock toward the end in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and when you saw that play initially live, I was like, Minshew's just heaving up a prayer. Like, it looked panicked, it looked chaotic. He gets out of the pocket, and then he just, lofts this thing skyward. And you're like, and Josh Downs runs under it, diving catch. You're like, oh, that's all Josh Downs. And then when you see it from the kind of all 22 angle, the end zone view, like behind Minshew, it's actually a well thrown pass. It's just, it doesn't. I'm starting to. I had this epiphany before we went on that like Gardner Minshew and Baker Mayfield play with the same sort of mad, out of control, like everything looks panicked, right, at all times. And it doesn't give you the good feels, you know. You don't feel confident when you see that, and yet sometimes it isn't chaotic and it is actually just how they play, and there's some sort of bad body language that comes off it. But I think it actually leads to you sometimes saying, "Oh, that's just like a lucky heave." Whereas you look at it from different angles or with a bit more consideration, like actually you put it where you want it to. It just doesn't look the way it does when you have a Josh Allen or a Mahomes, and everything looks calm and in control, even when it's not. So yeah, it's sort of. You're always waiting for the Minshew throw when one of those is in the air and there's three defenders like closing in on it.
Especially this year.
Yeah, but he didn't in this game. Like he actually generally put it in pretty good positions, and as I say, sometimes it requires some air put under it or just loft it out of the way. But he did a pretty good job.
For New England, it was their first loss in a game where they gave up 10 or fewer points. First loss since 2001, since the late Drew Bledsoe era. So all sorts of new records here. In New England this year, they're both teams heading to a bye. We'll see if anything happens or any news comes out of New England this week during the bye.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, seriously, Mac Jones, I tweeted yesterday, Mac Jones is reminding me of like late-term Marcus Mariota in Tennessee, where he was just so broken, something had to change. It didn't matter what the backup situation was. Like, the answer to this thing is Marcus Mariota has played his way to the bench. You need to change something. And remember, when that was happening, we had like the shell of Ryan Tannehill, who himself had been broken at the end of his Miami tenure. The idea was not Tannehill's going to come in and fix this thing. It was the only option here is to sit him down for a different broken quarterback. But you have to do it because Mariota doesn't give you any choice at this point. That's where Mac Jones is right now. Like, it doesn't matter that the backup is Bailey Zappi. It doesn't matter that Zappi might only last a game before you have to turn to Will Greer. Like, you just have to change something because Mac Jones he's not giving himself a chance right now. He is wrecked.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit on the preview show, how he's not seeing the field. Like, QB slumps are interesting because it's like, why are you not doing the things that you've done previously?
Right.
Seeing the field, what is it about your vision? What is it about not making the throw that you would have previously? What is it about just brain fart in the red zone? Like, why are you just chucking it up to nobody?
But it's like, are you coming?
But it's bad.
Yeah. The question is though, when that's happening and the QB is in a slump, it's like, are you coming out of the other side of this if we keep playing you, or are we just digging a deeper hole at this point? And I can't see anything other than we're digging a deeper hole.
Yeah, I mean, either way, it does seem like, nothing against Mac Jones. I know he was talking about mental health this week. I mean, it seems like he's really struggling with this. But if you're the Patriots and you're like, hey, even though he was pretty good as a rookie, I mean, we need to look for a franchise quarterback. And we're going to be, in the hunt for that in the draft.
I mean, this is a tough landscape now in a world of sort of increased awareness of mental health issues and all that kind of stuff. Like, when the quarterback is saying things like that, that's its own problem. I mean, whether or not there's a path to the other side of that as a starting quarterback for him. Like, right now, if your starting quarterback is talking about the struggles he's dealing with mental health, even if it's off the field entirely, like that's its own thing, saying the guy has bigger problems than starting at quarterback for you right now.
All right, we'll see what comes out of that. As I said, both teams going to be on bye here coming out of Germany.
Big game for DeForest Buckner, and in fact, the Colts pass rush generally it was, low-scoring game. It's always bad offense versus good defense. There was quite a lot of good defense from the Colts. Like, their pass rush made a real impact. It was causing all kinds of problems for Mac Jones in particular. Their pass protection, generally speaking, held up pretty well as well. Bernard Ryman playing not quite at home, but closer to home than America is. Austria versus Germany. He played really well.
Good shout out. Good credit to the Colts here. Didn't want to dismiss them. But I am trying to get to say, as a parent, you've had to learn so many new skills to provide for your family. How to do copious amounts of laundry, meal plan for even the pickiest eater, and now how to protect your family's financial future. Fabric by Gerber Life provides an easy one-stop shop for your family's financial needs, offering high-quality term life insurance policies plus other financial solutions in one easy online hub. Fabric was designed by parents for parents to help you get a high-quality, surprisingly affordable term life insurance policy in less than 10 minutes. Fabric has flexible policies that fit your family and your budget, like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. Get your personalized quote in just minutes and then apply when it's convenient for you. It's all online and on your schedule. You can go from start to covered in less than 10 minutes with no health exam required. So join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. MEET fabric.com/PFFNFL. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Insurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. All right, man, let's go to one of the wildest games of the day. Cleveland Browns 33, Baltimore Ravens 31.
Do we have a special graphics package or sound?
There's no mighty roar. There we go, a mighty roar from the sound booth that no one else can hear except us.
Yeah.
From producer Tyler.
It's good podcasting.
Of course it is. Yeah, I'm just telling the people. I'm trying to paint the picture of electric excitement that's happening here in the booth. Is Eli here today?
Of course he can.
Oh, see?
Yeah.
Wow.
Great podcasting. It's perfect.
So Tyler shows up, Browns fan. Eli, Bengals fan, just
Doesn't
no
show up.
shows this Monday morning. Just not here.
Not here. No.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of, we got fair weather producers is what I'm saying. No Bengals fans here.
It's true.
Only Browns fans. So only it's that's their deal. If it's a victory Monday,
They only show up on victory
you show
Mondays.
up to work, right? Ride the adrenaline through the week. Anyway, this game was a little nutty, Sam.
Little nutty.
Little nutty. Ravens were up 24-9 at one point, and it didn't matter. Browns made the comeback. I do want to go through the sequence of the game, right? It started with Deshaun Watson, less than a minute into the game, throwing a pick six to Kyle Hamilton on a tipped pass. Unbelievable play by Kyle Hamilton as a blitzer. Tips it up, catches it, runs it in, and Baltimore's up 7-0 about 40 seconds into the game. Incredible start. They were up 14-0, then 24-9, but the Browns kept battling back.
No, they did. They were down multiple scores in the fourth quarter. The game looked, for all intents and purposes, like it was Baltimore's to win all the way through. And then Deshaun Watson actually has a good second half. Didn't have a good overall game.
Yeah.
But the second half, he was like 14 for 14 or something in the second half, which some Browns fans out there are like claiming means he played perfectly in the second half. The distinction between a perfect completion rate and a perfect game appears to pass them by.
Oh, so the PFF grade should be 100.
Yes.
Is what you're saying.
Exactly. According to them, essentially, yes.
Yeah.
100 grade for the second half, and then whatever you want to do to that with the first half involved. But that's
Find
what
better
the
fans, but
expectation
yeah, go
is.
on.
But the point being, he played well in the second half and was a big part of them coming back in that game. Like, remember we talked before for the preview of this game. This is the game. Like, this is the reason Deshaun Watson's there. And by the way, up until halftime, like, you're looking around the landscape and you're like, we traded 3 first-round picks, a third and a fourth, and then paid this guy $230 million in addition to the PR nightmare that was. And it's not immediately obvious that he's any better than either the guy that was starting last year, Baker Mayfield, or the guy that was like buried on the depth chart last year and we shipped away for a 5th-round pick or something in Josh Dobbs. That's not great. And then the second half, Deshaun Watson goes out there, does complete all 14 of his attempts, has a passing touchdown, and plays probably the best half of football he's played as a Cleveland Brown. And like, all right, that right there was the reason. Now, we need that all the time, but that at least was a sign and a glimpse and an important one because without it, they don't win the game. Like, that was the reason we went through this, A, PR nightmare, and B, cost so much to get him.
Yeah, I mean, Watson did play well down the stretch. I want to go back through the sequencing, but yeah, Watson on the game-winning drive hit a bunch of big throws, 16-yard scramble to set up the eventual game-winning field goal. But what actually happened in this game, going backwards a little bit here, after the pick six, Keaton Mitchell comes back for the Ravens with a 39-yard touchdown run. One of only 3 carries for Mitchell, though, even though he's become a big play threat for the Ravens. But they're up 14-0.
And 1 catch for 30-something yards. Like, Keaton Mitchell's, he's like the new Devin Achane. He's going to average like 100 yards a touch, and we're barely going to give him the football.
Is he 3rd in the league in rushing yards now, like Achane was when he left? Both teams were trading field goals for a little while. The Browns blocked a field goal, which ends up becoming a big play as well. It's 17-9. Ravens going into the half, right? Didn't it feel like the Ravens were up 14-0? Feels like they're in control, but the Browns defense did a really nice job, right? I mean, this wasn't the Browns defense giving up all these points.
Yeah.
It was a pick 6. There was a short field a little bit later on. But then what looked like, all right, this is the Ravens running away with it. Odell Beckham turns back the clock with a 40-yard touchdown on a slant. And it's like, all right, old school OBJ. It's now 24-9. This is the Ravens team that destroyed Seattle, destroyed Detroit, and is going to do this again. But this time it's a division rival. But again, the Browns kept coming back. They score a touchdown. They go for 2. A 17-play, 75-yard drive, Sam. Finish it with Kareem Hunt, but they go for 2, down 15. This is a controversial play in Michigan, Penn State. Why did James Franklin go for 2 when you're down 9 after the touchdown? But the Browns did that to get within 7. But then they muff a punt. Like, it was like the Browns kept trying to give the game back to the Ravens. Short field, Ravens go up 2 scores again, but the Browns just keep battling back, all a part of Deshaun Watson and his really strong second half.
Yeah, is that still a controversial thing, to go in for 2 early? Are we not?
I was in DMs with our friend Booger this week, Saturday, trying to explain the logic there.
But most people know now.
So Boog and I, I didn't want to call him out on Twitter or anything like that. We just had a cordial DM conversation. I felt like we probably should just hash this out over the phone. Now, the Michigan-Penn State thing was like right at the end of the game. And it's one of those, like, we're going to increase our win probability by 0.5% by going for 2. And when you don't get it, your win probability drops.
Yeah.
Obviously.
But like now people know why. I mean, you can argue whether or not you're doing it, but you can't ask the question. If you ask the question now, why are they doing that? That's a you problem. You're ignorant of the landscape.
I'm not trying to be pretentious about it, because I used to have the same belief, right? You're down 15, you score a touchdown.
This is one of those ones that is counterintuitive.
And you save the 2-point conversion till the end.
Yeah.
Until someone just explained it to me. And it's like, if you're going to fail, do it earlier.
Right.
It's like, oh, I hadn't thought of that previously. Now I am.
This is one of those ones that is counterintuitive. But once you've been explained the logic, it's not like it makes sense, right? And even if you would deviate or disagree with it, again, like if you can't anymore be asking the question, why is this happening? Like, that's just not understanding the information that's pretty important to whatever it is you're talking about. Like, I don't know. Anyway,
so it's 31-17. Browns come back, score another touchdown. Deshaun Watson finds Elijah Moore on a nice play. So the Ravens have a 7-point lead. This is a very long game. All the other 4 o'clock games are wrapping up, and it's still 8 minutes left in this game. And then Lamar Jackson has a pass batted up. So for the second straight week, a ball is batted up in a Browns game, just soaring in the air. And the Browns must do a lot of tip drill stuff. Remember last week, Amari Cooper was like tracking this batted pass for a touchdown. This time it's Greg Newsome on the defensive side of the ball, tracks the batted pass, catches it, takes it to the house for a pick 6 to maybe tie the game, except the Browns missed the extra point. So instead of tying it, it's 31-30. But again, the Browns defense stepped up, made a stop. Browns had an opportunity on the final drive. Deshaun Watson drives them down to the field, and Dustin Hopkins redeems himself with a 40-yard game-winning field goal. Browns win 33-31.
Redeems himself. Yeah, like this would be because it's 31-33. You would look at just the score and you'd be like, the Browns defense must have been must have finally been overwhelmed or had a bad day. But actually, their defense still played really well. Like, points came from other places at times, and their performance was really good. The Browns defense is still phenomenal. Myles Garrett had like a TJ Watt game where he had 2 sacks but only 4 total pressures. Like, he had that game where he didn't get it like 10 pressures and was a constant source of problem, like pass rush win rate off the charts. But when he won, he got a sack almost half the time.
He needed one of those. He needs one of those for the Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, so he's having the season now that, I mean, TJ Watt did this a few years ago, and then this became his shtick. And there was a few other guys that, like Khalil Mack had a season like this, where he went from incredible in the run game and getting a ton of pressure, and then he flipped a switch, and suddenly he's getting the impact plays at the end of it. And that's the thing that, like, transforms you from a perception standpoint when you start making those game-changing plays, not just like consistently getting pressure and you know, affecting the game. This is the year where Myles Garrett has already had, you know, like a high-profile game where he took over and just dominated. He's been getting the sacks. Like, he's having the season that makes people sit up and take notice and go, oh, the guy is playing at a Defensive Player of the Year type level, even if he's been at that level, you know, for a few years now.
Saw this stat from NFL Research that I sent you as well, Sam. Through 10 games.
Yeah.
Ready?
Uh-huh.
The Ravens have trailed less than any other team in NFL history except two others through 10 games. So the teams that have trailed the least, is that the best, fewest number of minutes since whenever, in the last 40 years. The 84 Dolphins.
The merger. It's always the merger.
This is last 40 years is what they're saying.
Yeah.
So they may have cut it off somewhere. 84 Dolphins, only under 15 minutes that they trailed. So they started 10-0. The 98 Broncos, 27 minutes. They started 10-0. Third is the Ravens, 28 minutes and 46 seconds. That's all they've trailed this year.
Less than a half.
And they're 7-3. The next two teams on the list, the 1990 Giants, 43 minutes. They started 10-0. And the 07 Patriots, 51 minutes. They started 10-0. So there's four teams that are 10-0 on this list, and then the 7-3 Ravens. So I ask you, Sam, are the Ravens the best 7-3 team in NFL history?
I have no idea.
Perhaps they are.
Maybe. Yeah. So essentially, of the top 5 teams in NFL in the last 40 years who have trailed the least, the Ravens are the only one that have actually lost games in the process.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's correct.
This was also a very costly game for them. Marlon Humphrey, it sounds like he's going to be done with an Achilles injury. That's what the TV/Twitter doctors are all claiming, right? Don't know. Hasn't been confirmed.
They have a decent hit rate.
But they're all saying popped Achilles. And that is the one injury that they tend to have a pretty, like, nail strike rate on. You know, so Achilles for Marlon Humphrey, that's pretty bad. Ronnie Stanley went down with a knee injury that's probably not long-term, but is likely to keep him out at least. They're on a short week, right? They play Thursday.
They have to come back Thursday night against the Bengals.
So Stanley is likely out for Thursday. They might be down like 3 starters in the offensive line heading into Thursday against a good team. That's not ideal for them. So in addition to the way the game ended up going, it was pretty costly from a personnel standpoint.
There is this, you remember early in the year, the Ravens blew multiple 10-point leads last year. And Mike McDonald, the defensive coordinator, took a lot of the heat there. I mean, but there were games last year they didn't close out because of fourth quarter interceptions and everything, and that was this game as well. It was interesting because I thought Lamar had, 2 actual interceptions. This batted pass one, I mean, that's just bad luck. But he also threw one in the end zone that got negated by a defensive hold. And at first I was like, this is such a bad throw. I wonder if he knew that there was a defensive hold. And I don't think he did after reviewing it and seeing when the flag was thrown and everything. So Lamar had a couple really bad throws in there. He had an interception. I don't know what he was seeing just before the half. He threw a pick. And then the end zone one that got negated. Obviously the batted pass one, not on Lamar Jackson. That is just pure luck. But there is something to the Ravens. We'll see if this pops up in the playoffs or wherever. Them closing out games. Because same thing happened in Pittsburgh. They couldn't close out the Steelers. I mean, this is the reason why the Ravens are on this list of they haven't trailed, yet they still have 3 losses. Quirky loss to the Colts in overtime earlier this year, quirky loss to the Steelers, and now this one to the Browns. And, I mean, it literally is the opposite of the Steelers, where the Ravens will dominate the entire game, then lose.
And critical turnovers.
And, yeah, critical turn. I mean, again, yesterday, the batted pass one, whatever. I don't know what happens there. But there's something else in the way Lamar Jackson was playing that, you know, the one that was negated was also poor. So just something to keep an eye on with the Ravens. It seems to be a trend here the last couple seasons. So the Ravens are now 7-3. The Browns are 6-3. And Bengals moved to last place. We'll talk about them in a minute here. Last place in the AFC North with their loss. But it's going to be Ravens hosting the Bengals. Short week here on Thursday night. They've been serving up Panthers, Bears to get to the main course here. Thanksgiving month, right? We got is the turkey the main course? I know nobody likes turkey, but main course on Thursday Night Football is this week. Ravens and Bengals.
Or the turducken.
Oh, yeah, the turducken. Man, old school Thanksgiving with John Madden. It's great stuff.
Just a constant explainer of what the hell a turducken is, and then usually him diving in with his hands to this bird monstrosity.
Oh, man, nothing says Thanksgiving like John explaining the turducken.
Which, by the way, always had to be cold, right? There's no way he was plunging his hand into a roasting hot bird of some description.
Probably warm. You could do it
warm.
It could be warm,
okay.
yeah, but not
in the warming drawer.
It's not right out of the oven,
right?
What I want to know
I'm just saying,
is,
all these things where they have the legs,
why do we podcast for 2.5 hours?
Yeah, they hand the legs to the players, and Madden's got his turducken sitting there with him. This is a cold bird that somebody has had just plonked in the stadium for hours.
Since I was just on set for Sunday Night Football last week, I didn't see the place where people cook. I didn't see,
Al's,
where the spread.
Yeah, Al's mobile chef.
Yeah, so who's grinding out all the turkeys on Thanksgiving Day for all these broadcasts?
That's what I'm saying. And so it has to be done either in the bowels of the stadium somewhere, right? Or off-site, and then transported, which means the thing is cold. That can't be a pleasant experience. Here's a stone-cold bird to either plunge your hand into or wrench a leg off.
You just don't understand TV, Stan.
No, not to that degree.
Anyway, AFC North remains extremely competitive. Let's go to Houston Texans 30, Cincinnati Bengals 27. The Texans move to 5-4. The Bengals fall to 5-4. And our listeners will be happy to know that we did meet up with Bobby for breakfast yesterday before the game.
We did, which looked like for a horrifying couple of minutes, looked like we'd cursed him. when things were spiraling out of control at the end of the game, it's we're never meeting Bobby again.
Bobby's now 1-0 in games where he breaks bread with us before the game.
Yeah.
But man, what an incredible game by the Texans. The Bengals get up early, 7-0. Joe Burrow hits the cover 2 shot to Trenton Irwin, and it's all right.
Dime, by the way.
Yeah, absolute beautiful throw. And as we had said coming in, look, old Joe Burrow looks like he's back. He's making these throws every week. He's breaking free from sacks. T. Higgins is hurt. Who cares? We're hitting cover 2 shots to Trenton Irwin. This is the Cincinnati Bengals. They just beat the Bills on Sunday Night Football. But the Texans hung tough, man, and they kept moving the ball offensively. We talked a little bit about Bobby's run game at breakfast. He's like, the numbers aren't great, we'll say, for the run game. But they ran the ball really well in this game. Devin Singletary running hard. And at the end of the day, C.J. Stroud kept making big plays. Now, he made a disastrous mistake in there, but other than that, unreal, again, by Stroud and this Texans offense.
Yeah, the Bengals, so they scored a touchdown early, and this actually came up in the at breakfast as well. We were talking about how sometimes you get those games where one team scores early, methodically, early drive, everything's going well, and then they never score again, and it just collapses. I mentioned that game, the NFC Championship game in 2017, where Minnesota get blown out by the Eagles, 47 or something, whatever the score was. And the Vikings, the 7 was the first drive. They went down, scored first, were 7-0 up, and then didn't score again for the rest of the game. Well, the Eagles just kept hammering them over and over again. It's weird the number of times that happens, where a team scores first, looks good, and then that's it. That's the highlight of the game, was your first drive. The Bengals have that methodical first drive touchdown, the Trenton Irwin score. They then went 5 straight punts, and then the final score was a 50-yard field goal. So they scored immediately and then got clamped by the Texans defense for the majority of the rest of the game. Meanwhile, you have Houston's offense under Bobby was cooking. C.J. Stroud looked great again. And honestly, okay, the interception was bad. But I kind of came out of this game even more impressed by Stroud, probably because of that. He made a critical mistake at a terrible time, and some of the play calling, dare I say it, was questionable late on too.
What?
Bobby almost went full Kyle Shanahan. It's what it looked like. There was some, let's dial up a pass play here.
There wasn't a minute left. There was over 2 minutes left.
I know. I'm just saying it looked like...
critical of your friend. Okay, you have to. You have to be critical of your friends.
Right.
Sometimes.
It seemed like the thing to be doing there was not necessarily to be calling up pass plays for your rookie quarterback, but actually to just keep, pounding the ball on the ground. That's been working quite well. Anyway, it looked like everything was about to melt down for Houston. But when they put themselves in this hole, C.J. Stroud came back and shook it off. It was like, it's all right. It's one bad play. Doesn't matter. Like that short memory that people talk about all the time, right?
Amnesia. Got to have that amnesia.
Being able to park the bad play and not dwell on it and not let it create a second bad play, but to just go, one bad play, one mistake, it's done now. We move on to the next one. Now we go back to positivity. And they got it done. Like Stroud to Tank Dell is a hell of a combination, and we've seen that over the last few weeks. And
Stroud to Noah Brown, man.
Noah Brown, huge.
So couple big plays in this game. As you said, Cincinnati scores early, and then Houston gets up 20-7. And it's like, all right, they're gonna pull this thing off.
It looked like an absolute statement from them, like both sides of the ball. Their offense is cooking, and their defense, after that first touchdown drive, again, 5 straight punts from this Bengals offense that was looking untouchable.
I say this all the time, right? When the underdog is leading, you're waiting for the team that's, the 6-point favorite, Cincinnati here.
Right.
You're waiting for the favorite to come back. And you've said for the last week, Cincinnati looks like the best team in the NFL right now. And let's wait for them to come back. Texans hold them to a field goal. It's 20-10. Then it's like, okay, now they're coming back. Joe Burrow rolls out, hits Jamar Chase with a 64-yarder, beautiful play. And it's like, all right, now the Bengals are going to come back. Texans come back with another score, 27-17. This is what I'm really impressed with, and it's a C.J. Stroud scramble for 8 yards, right? Sees the field, takes off when he needs to, gets the 8-yard touchdown. This was after a 34-yarder to Noah Brown. This was after Devin Singletary running hard. Like I said, the best the run game has looked for Houston all season. Mm-hmm. But you're referencing the interception, and then, Burrow's throwing interceptions that he hadn't thrown previously. It's like the Texans are going to do this thing.
I thought this game was over, like, 2 or 3 separate times. Like Burrow has a ridiculous sort of high interception where he missed the guy over the top. I was like, that could be the game. Then he has a bad red zone interception. Like, well, that's definitely the game. And it still wasn't. There was more attempts.
So we get to 3:41 left. It's 3rd and 2, Sam. You could throw the ball on 3rd and 2.
Sure.
But Stroud makes a terrible misread, hits Cam Taylor-Britt, who has another interception. So the Bengals have life, and it's like, okay, now Cincinnati's going to do this thing because of this terrible mistake. They come back, score. It's 27-24. And then they stop Houston again, 3rd and 3. They go deep. DJ Turner breaks up the pass, and it's like, all right, one last chance for Cincinnati to drive down and score. Burrow hits Tyler Boyd up the seam on 3rd down, drops it. So the Bengals should have been up a touchdown. Instead, they go up a field goal.
Right.
And, they kick a field goal to tie it, and you just don't want to give C.J. Stroud. This is where it is really impressive, man. It's a tie game, $1:33 left. Stroud had already thrown this interception to allow the Bengals back into the game, and he is just nails under pressure, gets Houston back into field goal range for the game winner.
And Boyd drops a touchdown on 3rd and goal. Like that.
Yes.
That's a big,
they should have been a
big mistake.
If he catches the ball, Cincinnati's up a touchdown.
Yeah.
And Stroud has to drive for a touchdown, like he did last week against Tampa Bay, but just to tie it. Obviously, you talk about like win probability changes and everything.
Massive
the difference,
swing.
It's a 4-point drop, essentially, for Tyler Boyd there, who had a really good game otherwise. Credit Houston for hanging tough and then making this comeback when they needed to.
Yeah, this is another game where it's not like his numbers are bad, like 356 yards or whatever for C.J. Stroud, but I thought some of his best passes were incompletions. Like that.
The throw that he made to Robert Woods in the end.
Crazy. And that, I can't 100% say that shouldn't have stood. Like they ruled that his foot went out of bounds earlier in the play, and it might have, but there was no definitive look at that. Like, had it been called the other way, I don't know that they would have been able to overturn it and say his foot was definitely out of bounds. That doesn't count. And that was an absolute dime.
It was. Because it wasn't just like a rollout. Like he was running, he had to run fast.
There was no window either. And somebody just threaded it through people.
It was helmet high. right on him. It was a great throw. I mean, that was one of Stroud's best throws, I think, this season, and it'll go down as an incompletion.
Right.
By the way, as we get into officiating and process and everything, it was ruled incomplete. It should have been 4th down. Texans are going to kick a field goal.
Yep.
It was ruled incomplete, and the officials went to a break to review the play, not because Houston challenged, but just because. Is that the first? That's the first time I've ever seen that. Is that new and allowed? They've been more subtle about it though, Sam.
Yeah.
Like they're in my ear.
Yeah.
New York's looking at it. We're just gonna fake huddle for some time here, and then we'll say, hey, we talked about it. / got some more information.
Right.
Here's the new call. But this was like, we're gonna go to break. We're gonna run every replay on this thing, and not because the Bengals challenged or the Texans challenged, but just because we want to get it right. And I'm not arguing with the process here. It's just the first time I've seen that.
There is this increased involvement from New York in officiating calls, which I think is a good thing overall. What the problem is with NFL officiating almost universally is just the lack of transparency in the process. Like if they simply said, this is a TMO thing in rugby. If they simply said, New York is buzzed down, we're going to look at this in the TV booth or whatever, cool. That makes sense. Like, let's actually look at it and let's figure it out. We don't need the challenge to come in to get it right. We don't need the official to decide, let's have a look at it. New York has buzzed and said, this is important. We need to check this out. And it was a touchdown and or not. So it's just the confusion that is the problem. And the confusion always breeds conspiracy. Like that's the issue with all this stuff. Whether it's the TMO and rugby now going to this bunker system where you never hear it, whether it's soccer with the VAR and you never hear the audio unless it's so catastrophic that the explanation has to be corruption to the degree where you have to release the audio to prove that it's simply incompetence. Like, that's how bad the mistakes go.
It's simply incompetence.
This is the problem with NFL officiating is you never hear anything from the discussion, so the assumption becomes, the game's rigged. It's a script, etc. Anyway, monster game by the Texans pass rush. Like part of the Bengals' 5 straight punts was that pass rush was destroying them. Sheldon Rankins, 9 pressures, a pass rush win rate of 26.7% as a defensive tackle is a crazy number. But he wasn't alone. Like a bunch of those Texans guys got significant pressure.
Yeah, Rankins had a huge game. Will Anderson, Jonathan Grenard, all those guys. Looks like 4 guys had at least 4 pressures, at least when you take no plays off. So, yeah, huge game up front by Houston. Look, I know they almost blew it at the end, but this might be the most complete game from Houston.
Yeah.
Because passing attack, like they've had to rely on the passing attack a ton. As I mentioned, though, Devin Singletary goes 30 carries for $150. Clearly there was something there where they felt like they needed to grind it out. And they were getting those 4, 5, and 6 a bunch of times to stay on schedule. And then the defense getting the turnovers and creating havoc up front.
There's also something, I think, for them, not just not blowing it, but being they dug themselves out of the hole. They didn't just get lucky at the end. I mean, they did in a way that, like, Tyler Boyd catches that touchdown, the game probably goes a different way. But the point being, they got given the opportunity again to, like, okay, you melted down, but we still have a shot at this. Now go win it. And they went and won it. Like that, I think, is a big thing for this Texans team. It would have been very easy to come out of this game from their perspective and not feel great about it, given the way the end went, of collapsing, almost melting down completely. This was your Shanahan moment where, Shanahan is still carrying those 28-3 and, the 49ers Super Bowl around, like, look what he's done. The guy melts in key moments. Like, this would have been damaging for them if they had collapsed like that and lost the game. And, okay, you would have been able to, it's the Bengals. They're a really good team. Nobody's hotter than them right now. But it would have been pretty, it would have been a big blow to them. But being able to drag themselves out of it, I think, was important. Like we said with the Thursday night game, costly game potentially for Cincinnati as well. Do you see the freaky Trey Hendrickson thing?
I did not, no.
So Trey Hendrickson's just like standing around after the play, and I'm not quite sure how it started, but Noah Brown was doing this thing where you're like, you're off balance, and you're like, falling essentially, but falling over 10 yards and not, trying to fight it, and was just sort of fell towards Trey Hendrickson, like miles after the play. Hendrickson's just standing around like chatting with somebody, and then suddenly Noah Brown like careens into his knee and takes him out. And again, it's not like I don't think this is going to be a season-ending thing, but he's probably out Thursday.
Yeah, that's not great. Last thing I want to highlight: Noah Brown, trucking through dudes to get into field goal range here. But the two big plays on the final drive, 25-yarder to Dalton Schultz, who continues to make big plays at tight end, and again, the Stroud connection to these guys, has been huge. And then Noah Brown goes 7 catches for $172.
Huge game.
He's the second highest graded receiver over the last 3 weeks, and this is the best he's played since high school.
Yeah,
when he was a 5-star recruit back in 2014. So with no Nico Collins, the Texans still getting it done with Noah Brown, Dalton Schultz, Tank Dell, as we've said. So very impressive win for Houston.
One last mention that we highlighted this going into the game, but Trey Hendrickson going up against Laramie Tunsil promised to be like one of the best one-on-one matchups of the week. It was. I mean, Hendrickson's going to come out of the game with probably he had a ton of pressure. Tunsil is going to come out with giving up, I think, 4 pressures.
There's a lot of stunts. The Bengals did a nice job getting pressure on stunts up front against that line.
Tunsil, the 4 pressures of it stands would be he's only had 1 game since the start of last year, the start of 2022, where he's given up more than 2 pressures in a game. So, and it's not like, I'm not saying that Trey Hendrickson won, quote unquote, but Hendrickson had some wins. Tunsil had a lot of wins, and just by the nature of pass rushing, pass protection, the sort of 7/4 somewhere in the middle, that's a good back and forth encounter. Like that was an absolute war between those two guys all the way through the course of the game, where I think both guys did well.
Makes for a fascinating Thursday night game, as I said. Bengals and Ravens both coming off a loss and have the short turnaround this week. Who are the pretenders? Who are the contenders? We're more than halfway through the NFL season, but DraftKings Sportsbook is still pumping out unbeatable offers every single game. New customers can bet just $5 on anything to get $200 instantly in bonus bets. DraftKings isn't stopping there because all customers can take advantage of a sweetener offer every single game day. Get in on the football action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. So you've got Monday Night Football here, little Broncos-Bills that you can still get in on the action, but you just go download the app. Right now, use the code PFF, and new customers can bet just $5 on anything to get $200 instantly in bonus bets. That's only on DraftKings Sportsbook with the code PFF. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. Licensee partner, Golden Nugget, Lake Charles, Louisiana. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ont. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football. Terms for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. And I just deleted the copy. Okay, we fixed it. That would have been bad for the next time around. Let's stay in the AFC North. Pittsburgh Steelers moved to 6-3 with a 23-19 win against the Green Bay Packers. The Steelers are outgained for the 9th straight game this season. They give up 388 total yards and move to 6-3 on the season. Old tungsten arm strikes again for Pittsburgh.
Tungsten arm. Yeah. How is this happening?
They had 119 net passing yards. I'll say this. This was the best the run game has looked for Pittsburgh in a while, at least results-wise. And listen, nuance here. I think there was a combination. There was some really well individually blocked plays by Pittsburgh. I also thought this was really bad run defense by Green Bay. As I was grinding the film, the run fits and the run defense was not great. But Jalen Warren continues to add a spark to this offense, a little explosiveness in some of his shifty runs and acceleration. So Jalen Warren finishes with 15 carries for 101 and a score. Najee Harris finds the end zone as well. And I think Pittsburgh's run game was really good. But I thought we had this game pegged, Sam, in the preview. We were looking at the splits, and we're like, this, nobody's going to do anything till the second half and everything. But this is the complete opposite. All the scoring came early. And Steelers were up 23-19 early in the fourth quarter. 20-19 early in the fourth quarter. They go up 23-19 and just hold off Green Bay. The real story in the game ends up becoming the Steelers' perspective. Steelers bend but don't break defense.
Yeah.
388 yards. However, the Packers go 1 for 5 in the red zone.
Right. It didn't happen the way I said, but it was the right score, right? The Steelers are supposed to win by 4. It was just I expected that to happen in the last drive by Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, you were half right.
Right.
Yeah.
You're right. I got the margin of victory was correct. Just the manner in which it happened was incorrect.
Yeah. I mean, it was 17-13 at the half. It should have been 17-13 in the second half.
Right. It should have been like a 0-3 game at the half.
Exactly.
And then everything happened in the second half, and instead it was the opposite.
Yeah. If it was 6-6 at the half, and then the Steelers pulled away 17-13 in the second half, it would have made sense. Just flip them. It's like old Raiders drafts. Just
turn them upside down.
Turn them upside down.
It's a better draft.
Any thoughts on this game? Takeaways?
Well, one thing that struck when you were talking about the run games there, like both these teams have an old school thunder and lightning backfield. Like each guy has a big heavy bruiser and then a smaller, shiftier, fast, explosive running back that they actually do use in tandem. And I think there's something to that when the thunder part of your backfield is missing the lightning, Like you don't need thunder and lightning, but the thunder needs to have the capacity to have lightning, right? Like Derrick Henry has got some lightning to his game. You don't need the lightning because Derrick Henry brings the lightning, right? When you just have thunder, you need the lightning.
Thunder brought the lightning more for the Packers than lightning.
Yeah. On this occasion. Not usually, though.
Not usually.
Yeah. And it helped, and part of that was the lightning dropping the football.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting because this was like Jordan Love coming out of college description, where he was going to have some big-time throws and some boneheaded mistakes and everything. And like the game-ending interception, I don't think you can. It's a last play, right? All you can ask is that you give your receiver a chance. He didn't necessarily do that, but that's the fact that it's an interception doesn't matter. It's a desperation throw. But Love had some beautiful throws in this game. First touchdown to Romeo Doubs, touchdown to Jaden Reed behind the defense. These were the types of big-time throws that you want from a Jordan Love. Explosiveness that the Packers offense did not have.
Which hasn't been a big part of his game, actually, this season. Like, for a quarterback that generally you would hear him described in Jameis Winston terms of, highly volatile, a lot of big, a lot of bad. There haven't actually been that many big plays before this game. Where is his big-time throw rate?
I've got no plays on. He's down in the 20s somewhere.
Why do I not see his name in the list of quarterbacks?
Ultimate stalling here?
Oh, because I'm looking at last year.
But like my note on the red zone. So he throws. So the Packers have
3.2% before this game.
Pretty low.
Yeah.
Before the Packers had their final opportunity, they had, with about 3 minutes left, second down. There's an interception in the end zone, and it's Christian Watson against Patrick Peterson. And Love kind of just chucked it up. So this is where when I'm trying to describe the Packers offense, this isn't necessarily a turnover-worthy play. I don't think it's a bad throw. And what you're doing is just kind of like giving your receiver a jump ball opportunity in the end zone when you need a touchdown with 3 minutes left in the game. It's not an egregious decision. Pass gets tipped up and gets picked by Keanu O'Neal. But it was one of those decisions where Christian Watson runs a horrible route. He runs a double move against Patrick Peterson, and Peterson's like, ha, 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 seen this one before. Stays on top of it. And then Watson's not competitive enough at the catch point. Peterson tips it up. It gets picked off. It's easy to revise history and be like, oh, Jordan Love should hit the check down. But there is this element of knowing when to take the chance. I feel like I was seeing this with Jameis Winston in the comeback opportunity too. Throwing a game-ending interception's not the worst thing in the world, right? You've got nothing to lose. But there's something about the timing of when to take those chances. On second down, Jordan Love had a check down available. He kind of just, let me just chuck it up and take this chance like it's fourth down, right? That's a piece of what's missing, I think, in Love's game is knowing when to take those chances, when to make those plays. And that ended up coming back to bite. And then again, on the last drive, though, they get into range because I couldn't believe Jordan Love completed the pass to Jaden Reed to just get into a scoring opportunity late. He's fallen back. It was like he was full Jameis. And I was tweeting through that. It felt like, Love was playing a Jameis-y type of game. Jameis was actually playing on the other side, playing like a Jameis game. And then if you're watching Red Zone or you have the multiple screens up, they both literally threw game-ending interceptions at the same exact time. It was well synced. So I was actually kind of intrigued by Love for a lot of this game. But there's still just some of those when to take the shots, when to check down, like some of those things may be missing from his game.
That interception was such a weird play.
Would you agree with my assessment on Watson's route? And
so
I
everything's
don't
bad.
love the chance.
Everything is bad.
Yeah.
Everything. So you hear a lot about double slants, right? One side of the field, you got two receivers, they're both running a slant, and the idea is, depending on how the defense plays it, one of them is open, right? Your job as the quarterback is to figure that out based off the alignment and based off what is being jumped. They ran double out and ups. Both receivers on that side ran the same out and up, right? Now, neither one of them was open because, okay, Patrick Peterson plays that very well. The man has been in the NFL for a long time. He's seen a lot. He's playing, he's actually playing both parts of it pretty well. Like, he's in position to drive on the out, but never buys it enough to take himself out of position for the up. He does a really good job on that. Now, part of that, I don't think Jordan Love sells anything. Like, the closest he comes to pump faking is like taking his arm back slightly, and that's just not enough to move a guy like Patrick Peterson. So they never sell the out. Christian Watson's route isn't good. Even if it was, there's a safety over the top anyway because there's a second receiver there running exactly the same thing, taking the safety towards that spot. So, the play design is terrible as well. Like, you're moving the other defender to the position that would help, even if the corner drove on that.
Just a little stick nod next to it, right?
Yeah, but it's like a pretty severe one. So everything is bad on this play. And I think now Christian Watson is reaching this point where, so you look at this Green Bay Packers receiving core, and it's incredibly young, and it's making mistakes, and so you got Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Luke Musgrave, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, taking a bigger and bigger part. Your guy, Samari Toure, isn't playing at the moment. He's hurt, but, is in this mix as well. All these players. And you had this sort of established pecking order of, this is the depth chart, right? I think the Packers are reaching this point now where a meritocracy would reorder this because Christian Watson probably isn't amongst their top three receivers anymore. And yet, theoretically, as the high draft pick, he's arguably the number one on the depth chart. But Watson had a bad game in this, and it wasn't just that route, which wasn't great. He had a drop pass that was bad. He doesn't win at the catch point. He doesn't necessarily win physically for a guy that's overwhelming in size and speed, and it's costing them. He's one of the chief architects of these small mistakes, the compound that we talk about every single week for this Packers offense. Dontavian Wicks should probably be playing more than Christian Watson is at this point.
Yeah, man. Watson last year, he had all those touchdowns, all those big plays, because of his speed. And I thought the speed plus LaFleur did a really nice job of getting him into space. And I know I reference Khalif Raymond a lot, but he was like a bigger version of a Khalif Raymond where it's here's my speed guy. If you miss a line just a little bit, he's behind you. And that's a big play, which is great. That's a great skill set to have. I love speed and acceleration. But he's not great at pure route running. I'm just talking like running a curl with nuance, working back to the ball, and being QB friendly, as we like to say. He doesn't do any of that stuff very well, including this route and this, the catch point. So maybe he is just an oversized speed player, right? Speed, deep threat type of guy where you don't want to take too many one-on-one, contested catch shots or whatever it might be. Jordan Love did the same thing, the game ender against the Raiders, where it just didn't feel the right time to take that chance. It's late in the game. You got to take these chances, but you're just not picking the right spots for it. The one other controversial play in this game, Kenny Pickett backwards pass that was called incomplete. I don't know if I'm crazy, but I thought it was directly straight. like the ball was on the back half, like it was on the back part of the hash, and it ended up on the back part of the hash, but like camera angles make it look backwards. Am I crazy?
Not crazy. I think it definitely went backwards, but I think it went backwards by a lot smaller margin than everything made it look.
Yeah.
Like every camera angle made it look bad. It also, by the way, moved in the air. Like had it continued exactly straight on the track that it left his hand, it probably would have been directly straight down the line. But when you look, there's an angle from the sideline in particular. You see it move in the air. Like I don't know if it came out of his hand weird and therefore like skewed in the air, or if a gust of wind took it, but it moved sideways in the air, and that's what took it backwards. I think it was pretty clearly backwards, albeit by a much smaller margin than like the sort of basic camera angles made it look. Anytime it's like changing height, it's always going to be weird depending on the angle you're looking at, because the drop in height is going to make it look like it's traveling laterally.
I got it.
Three-dimensional space, Steve, it's a tricky thing these days.
It is very tricky. Well, credit the Steelers for their run game. Loved, again, Jalen Warren running extremely well. Run game, red zone defense wins it again for the Pittsburgh Steelers as they move to 6-3.
And sideline Canada.
And Matt Canada undefeated on the sideline.
I mean, we mocked. You're like coaching changes.
Openly mocked.
What's sideline going to do? Well, it turns out it's going to do 2-0. And I see no reason why that won't continue.
The Packers fall to 3-6. Let's go Tampa Bay 20, Tennessee Titans 6. Bucks move to 4-5. Titans fall to 3-6. Will Levis, not a great game for the Titans in his third NFL start. And again, the Bucks offense, I know they only ended up scoring 20, but the Bucks offense showing more life over these last couple of weeks than they had, the rest of the season. But they needed, Bucks were on a losing streak, had that heartbreaker last week against the Houston Texans, and needed a bounce-back game, and got a good one from Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans and company, even though Evans had some weird drops in there as well. He also came back with some of those, superhuman Mike Evans-type plays.
Well, they had but there was a sequence, I think, of back-to-back plays, or very close to back-to-back, where Baker Mayfield had an underthrown deep shot to Mike Evans, like underthrown by a mile. Evans catches it, and then
that was the sequence, yeah.
Right. Baker Mayfield mistake cost them 4 points, essentially. If he gets it out earlier, it's a touchdown easily. And then Mike Evans drops a touchdown right
Wide
after
open.
that.
Yeah.
It's like two separate times you cost yourself 4 points in this drive. Like either one of those plays should be a touchdown. You miss both of them, and you end up only getting a field goal. In in a closer game, that would have been a problem. But their defense, handled Will Levis and the Titans offense. So really, you just needed like a decent game from Baker Mayfield, not a great one.
Yeah, I mean, so that sequence, I did note it and was like, okay, this comes back to bite, because it put them up 7, I think, instead of 10 or 11. And it was like, those are back-to-back 4-point plays. But later on, Evans makes up for it, catching the ball and dragging defender into the end zone for a touchdown. Rashad White had a really nice touchdown on a screen pass, 43-yarder to kick off the scoring.
Dude, that
for
play,
the Bucs.
We never asked this to Bobby over breakfast, but I wonder if there's a better feeling as like a play caller than when you, through luck or design, catch the opposition in like the perfect play call.
Yeah.
Like they dialed up a screen for the exact time that Tennessee was blitzing, and it might not even have been a proper blitz. It might have just been the linebacker like green dogging on the running back, and thinking the running back staying in the block. And then he's like fakes the block and then slips out the screen, and the linebacker is charging up the middle trying to get to the quarterback. Either way, you've dialed up the play that it's going to dump the ball over their pass rush's head and just give them clean real estate to run into. So it was one of those perfect plays where you look at it live and you're like, oh, they're screwed. Like if this ball goes over the pass rush, it's a touchdown immediately. That must feel like, the feeling from that as a coach must be amazing.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, I've got it. I've nailed it. Like, this is the call. This will kill that play.
So from a Titans perspective, I thought the Bucs offense, they left a few points on the table, as we had talked about before. Mm-hmm. But a well-dialed up screen, Mike Evans getting behind the defense, Trey Palmer, some good plays, some bad, whatever. But they had some big plays in there. Bucs offense looking better for the first time, and we're back-to-back games for the first time all season. And then on the other side, Will Levis regressing a little bit after the 4-touchdown opening performance. throwing the ball to defense a little bit more. Had to take some chances late in the game, but I'm seeing kind of just some deep ball regression after he was hitting all of them, that first week.
Yeah, and that's, I think, to be expected. I think the bigger thing is, though, like we're seeing, the impact of that offensive line. It's bad. It's pretty terrible. And this was the question, right? Like, Will Levis has looked quite good and has all the arm in the world. He's got playmakers. The receivers are pretty good. The backfield is good. It's just the offensive line is a catastrophe. And you're like, is that enough to undermine all of the other things collectively and mean that none of that matters? And in this game, it kind of was. Like, you look at Tampa Bay's pass rush, and you can name like half a dozen guys that got a bunch of pressure. And by the way, because it's Tampa Bay, like, they're not content with just being like, we're going to get pressure with our front four. We're going to blitz as well. So Antoine Winfield Jr., the safety, with like 8 blitzes and 3 pressures, like they were not only taking your front or winning with the front four, but they're going to add a 5th guy to it, which you can't pick up either. And it's like, you look at the Titans' offensive line, it's just not good. Dylan Radunz
really struggled, mostly in the fourth quarter when they needed to pass.
Yeah, and Radunz is a guy that shouldn't be starting, and they know he shouldn't be starting. They've tried to not have him start before. He was supposed to be the future, right at right tackle, and he was so bad at that can't happen. So they benched him, went in different directions, and now the injuries have mounted, and he's back on the field playing for them. Chris Hubbard is playing.
Go look at Vita Vea's pressures. One where he takes out, whoops Andre, because I had mentioned it'd be great if they put Vita Vea right over Aaron Brewer at center. They didn't do that a ton. But Vita Vea beat, Andre Dillard at left tackle, Hubbard at right tackle, with some impressive rushes.
Can you imagine?
But yeah, it was a tough one for Levis.
We talk about sometimes, how shocking, like actually shocking, physically shocking it must be for an offensive tackle when Chris Jones moves out to the edge, right? It's like all of a sudden you're used to dealing with these sort of 6'5", 250, 60-pound edge rushers, and then all of a sudden this dude who's 315 and can still kind of move like that goes out there on the edge, and you're like, how do I deal with this? This guy is bigger than me, or at least the same size, and possesses the same kind of strength. Like, this is just a different thing. I'm not used to dealing with this level of strength, intensity, and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, now that guy's Vita Vea. Like, suddenly, instead of a 250-pound edge rusher, you've got this 350-pound ball of, like, violence running at you. And I don't know how you deal with that without experience. So, again, Vita Vea, so it doesn't happen like every snap. He's weirdly inconsistent. But, like, Andre Dillard just gets annihilated on one of those plays from the edge.
The Todd Bowles defense, too, they're tough to peg sometimes because they'll have a game like last week where it feels like, again, from a Texans perspective, they played great last week, but it feels like sometimes Todd Bowles' defense just runs into an offense that has all of the answers in the pass game against them. And then there's games like this one where Todd Bowles' defense, on like a week-to-week basis, as we mentioned, they're number 1 in EPA per play allowed against the run. That's kind of a Todd Bowles staple, in part because you've got guys like Vita Vea, but because you're gonna load the box, right? He doesn't want to get run on. And they did shut down Tennessee's rushing attack. It made Tennessee one-dimensional, and the pressure was getting there. And, so Bowles' defense looks really good coming out of this week, whereas last week it's like dudes on the hot seat. They're getting thrashed. It has been inconsistent over these last few weeks where they have somewhat dominant games like this, and then games like last week where they don't seem to have many answers.
Would you consider moving Peter Skoronski out to left tackle? Because, we talked about this draft time. It's one of those, you give him a chance to tackle first, you move him to guard. They go out and sign Andre Dillard for a fairly questionable sum of money, given Andre Dillard's previous career. Nothing so far through the first half of the season has suggested that was money wisely invested. And I would, if I was a betting man, I would suggest that Andre Dillard will not be the starting left tackle for this team for the long haul. So if that is the case, and you have made an error in your allocation of left tackle resources, you have a potential left tackle sitting there playing left guard right now as a rookie. Do you just bite the bullet now and say, we've already screwed this up, let's fix it potentially by moving our rookie out there?
I would do it. 32 and a quarter inch arms makes me think it's never going to happen.
Right.
There's just no. They think that's the outlier. You know what I mean? We'll talk more about it at draft time. They think that's the outlier. We don't. I believe in not going for the outlier when you're looking at it through a certain lens. The NFL views that as like, this is the outlier thing we can't do. We can't take a guy with those short arms, the stubby arms, and put him at tackle. We just can't do it. Even though I think he'd be better than Andre Dillard. I think he'd be better than Ray Dunns. He'd be better than the guys that hashtag look the part at tackle for the Titans. So, yeah, I would give him a shot.
I mean,
Does that affect his guard development if they have to kick him back in? I don't know.
That's the thing. I'd also ask the question, like, what's the downside here? We're already dealing with one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL, and he's a potential solution at a more important position at left tackle.
Yeah. I mean, I do think if you were debating elite guard, and maybe we'll see if Skoronski can get there, if you could choose elite guard or average tackle, you might take the elite guard, right? That's okay. I don't think that's a slam dunk you move him to tackle. But I think it depends on scarcity in the draft and in free agency. Like as they move forward, it depends on what you have available. But I think one of your options should be the ability to move Skoronski based off of what else you can get to fill in there for the Titans.
He's also not playing out of his mind at guard either. So it's not like if he'd hit the ground running and already looked like an all-pro at guard, maybe you'd be like, all right, well, let's not mess with a good thing here.
Right.
But he's playing okay. He's playing fine at left guard. I would give him a shot at tackle where he played in college and see if that works better. One other, T.A. Tart had a huge game here. We think about, the Titans' defensive line as being Jeffrey Simmons and friends, but like Tart was a really big impact player in this game.
No, Tart's a good player. Tennessee falls to 3-6 here by themselves in last place in the AFC South, and Bucks, because the NFC South was not good yesterday. Bucks the only team to win this weekend, 4-5. They're half game behind the Saints in the South.
Yeah, nobody above 500 in that division.
Yeah, just like last year. All right, the last 1 o'clock game? No, there's two more. Minnesota Vikings 27. The Saints, who we were just talking about, 19. Vikings moved to 6-4. Hottest team in the NFL. 5 straight wins for Minnesota. Saints fall to 5-5. Every time the Saints pull me back in, they disappoint. I started to believe in the Saints.
The opposite of that quote.
Yeah, no, the opposite. Yeah. But they pulled me back in. I did the opposite.
Yeah.
Churchill said that, right?
Definitely.
Yes. So Vikings 6-4, another great, early effort by Josh Dobbs, the way he was running around, making plays. Nice seam pass to pass up the seam to TJ Hawkinson for a touchdown. Josh Dobbs continuing to get the job done here.
Yeah. God, Josh Dobbs is fun. Like, the story was great, but he's actually playing well as well. And the Vikings are already dialing up plays that simply didn't exist in the playbook.
The 3rd and 1.
Yeah, like they're pulling out design run plays for the quarterback that obviously were not in the playbook when Kirk Cousins was your quarterback. Like literally never a thing you would even consider. So it's either something they've had on the back burner for if they ever have a mobile quarterback, or they've devised it in the last week and a half since they brought him in. Either way, that's good coaching. Like that's impressive work from this coaching staff to allow Josh Dobbs to be the most that he can be within this offense.
A little inside baseball on that. I'm not saying this was impossible to do previously, but having PFF Ultimate, having every play in the league at your fingertips and the ability to sort and filter does allow teams to do that, right? Like, as you mentioned, the Vikings weren't installing these plays even for just in case in the preseason or anything. But now you have the ability to search all the QB runs, look at what is happening around the league, pick out some of your favorite things, create some wrinkles off of that, and install them on the fly more efficiently and effectively than ever. They've always had video, but it's like easier to get to that, I think, just because of technology and things like PFF Ultimate. So, Kevin O'Connell having the QB run game, and it's not like this was a huge part of it. A lot of it was Dobbs scrambles. Dobbs had a scramble for a touchdown where he just looked fast, man. Former Tennessee Vol, Alontae Taylor, was in space. He's a good athlete in his own right, and Dobbs just beats him to the corner.
Yeah.
But that's like, it is a new added dimension
he's a good
for this
runner.
Vikings offense.
Yeah, like he's not just a quarterback that scrambles, which is, you get these guys every now and again where it's usually seen as like a negative for a quarterback. Like it's an indictment of his ability to pass the football because he wants to run. Like Malik Willis, right? Malik Willis is a scrambling quarterback ostensibly because he can't operate as a passer. Like he's a one read and run type of guy. Justin Fields is skewed in this direction as well, where it's one read and out of there because he can't work through everything. He can't operate from the pocket. There are other quarterbacks, though, where it is actually just a strength of what they do. They don't necessarily want to do it all the time, or it's not a huge part of the game because they can't function as a passer. It's just when you force them to it, it's an extra weapon that they have that other quarterbacks don't. So Lamar Jackson, right? Obviously, his rushing ability is insane. They use him as part of the design run game. He's not a massive scrambling quarterback, but when he does take off, like, oh, we thought we had this play shut down, but now we have to stop Lamar Jackson scrambling. Like, it's just an extra dimension. Clearly, Josh Dobbs is not Lamar Jackson, but it's the same idea where he does function as a passing quarterback. He can go through progressions. He can read defenses. And then when you do force him to move, he's actually good. Like, he's fast enough, strong enough, and good enough in terms of, pulling moves on defenders, like actually maximizing space, and strong enough as well. Like he'll throw his shoulder into that and hit a guy. So it's not just like, hey, we have this quarterback that happens to be mobile. It's like he's actually a good runner. And that is being brought to the table in addition to where he is as a passer, which is apparently okay. Like we talked before, one of the most surprising things about last week was that he didn't have any catastrophic turnover type plays, right? He had one turnover-worthy play in this game, and it was a completion for 30 yards or something.
Ended up caught.
Yeah. Where I looked at it live. I'm like, how did he threw this ball sort of into double coverage, and somehow Jordan Addison emerged from the other side of that with the ball? But what the hell just happened there? It went through the hands of a guy. But that was like his worst play in the game, and it was a positive play for the Vikings offense.
You talk about Dobbs running. When he was at Tennessee, University of,
yes,
he was in the backfield with Alvin Kamara and Jalen Hurd, who eventually moved to Baylor and then receiver at 6'4". I mean, it was a fearsome backfield because of Dobbs' rushing ability, and it was like they would put all three of those guys back there, and it really made life difficult for opposing defenses. So Dobbs is doing his thing. Vikings get up 27-3. Derek Carr gets hurt, gets high load, leaves the game, concussion, right?
And same as before, concussion and shoulder, which is the second time I think that's happened to him this year.
By the way, I saw somebody on the injury report this week with like a shoulder and personal. It's like, is it because you have to note everything? Like you could have just said shoulder, probably.
Yeah, I mean that takes care of it.
Anyway, it's 27-3. Jameis Winston comes in, unbelievable touchdown by Chris Olave, keeping his feet in the end zone to make it 27-11 after the 2-point conversion. Then we've got just the full Jameis experience. He's rolling out to his left. He fires the ball back across his body to A.T. Perry for a 15-yard touchdown. They get the 2-point conversion again, so it's 27-19, and that set up Saints make a couple stops and had some comeback opportunities, but there was also the other side of Jameis, which was interceptions. I'll talk about that again, but you want to go through your throwback across the body diatribe? I assumed you wanted to jump in on that.
I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Certainly not this one. I mean, this was the Jameis Winston. Like, Jameis Winston, all bets are off in terms of what the quarterback is going to do in a given play. Where there was somebody did one of these yesterday, though, like a more conventional throwback across the body thing, and it was another completion. I was just there seems to be a spate of those in the NFL at the moment. Like the archetypal play that you're coached not to do. If you're rolling in one direction, especially if you're rolling like to the side you don't throw with, if you're a right-handed quarterback, if you're rolling left, if you're a lefty rolling right, the thing you don't do is then stop your feet, switch all the way back, and fire it back to the middle of the field. And all of a sudden, everybody's doing that. And not only are they doing it, but they're working. Like Mahomes seems to have created this thing where everyone's realized, actually, that can function. As long as you just keep an eye on a backside defender, make sure there's nobody lurking there. It works.
It can be calculated.
And now I'm wondering, was this just Favre was unbelievably terrible at that? And so for 15 years, quarterbacks were like, whatever you do, don't do this. Bad things happen. But actually, this was just Favre never looking at the middle of the field, just firing it blindly.
Maybe QBs just have a little better spatial awareness and, it can be a calculated move. You have to know your arm strength. You have to know
I also wonder
defenders, know your receivers.
Yeah, if more, I don't know if like matchup zone coverage is changing the rules. It's sort of bringing defenders out of an area where they were usually just sort of spot dropping and staring at the quarterback.
That's
like
a good
I wonder if there's actual X's and O's reasons why it's safer now than it used to be. But it does, or maybe it's just a run of 5 passes in the last week that's making me talk about it. But
that's also a good theory.
Yeah,
that it could be that
anything could be happening right now.
So as I said, down 8, Saints have an opportunity to make the comeback. It's Jameis Winston, and his aggressiveness. I did look up recently. He's actually not that great in comeback opportunities. Not because
it was an unfortunate pause there.
Yeah,
he's actually not that great.
Well,
in comeback.
That's the style of quarterback. The style of quarterback. It's like if you're down a touchdown and the game ends on an interception, it doesn't matter. You're probably not winning anyway. So we overrate the fact that it's an interception versus like a 4th down incompletion. But usually that type of aggressive style leads to more comebacks. But I think what we saw here was Jameis not taking chances at the right time. He basically had 2 game-ending interceptions, one by Mekhi Blackman. By the way, Josh Metellus, the safety/linebacker for the Vikings, 9 pass rushes, 5 pressures. They did a really nice job. He had pressure on that interception by Jameis Winston on 3rd down. But then the Saints make another stop and get another opportunity with $1:56 left on the Minnesota 46, and it's 1st and 10. And this is like the same thing I said about Jordan Love. Like ending the game on an interception, it's okay. Like it happens. But on 1st and 10, Jameis drops back and chucks it into triple coverage. Like you got to take the chances at the right time. You got to give receivers a chance to make plays, but it's okay to throw the ball underneath on 1st and 10. So another interception that pretty much ended the game, even though there was another Hail Mary opportunity later as well.
Yeah, I mean, the quarterback's on that spectrum of aggression and volatility. There's a line between a heightened sense of aggression relative to other quarterbacks and just kamikaze play. Like I'm going to take my plane and fly it into your battleship, and that Jameis is on that side of the line. It's like mad kamikaze play where you're just firing the ball deep. It's like eventually I'm going to have to do this, so why not get out of the way now?
Yeah, it's just funny because like those, when you look at the stats of like 4th quarter comebacks and the QBs that have been successful, like we've talked about how Aaron Rodgers isn't actually great in those particular situations historically. Well, there are some great comebacks in there for him, but he's not as great because it does feel like maybe he's a little too fine at the end of the game. Whereas Jameis is still just like bull in a china shop and like, treating 1st down like it's 4th down. Like, anyway, he's a backup. He wasn't expecting to play in there. He got the Saints back into the game. But credit the Vikings, man. They are, with Dobbs under center, adding some wrinkles, doing it all without Justin Jefferson, and the defense is playing far better than it did earlier in the year.
Defense playing incredibly. Like Josh Metellus, you mentioned, is having a great season in all areas. He's like the primary joker in that 3-safety package, the guy that's moving everywhere and being everything at once. TJ Hawkinson with an incredible game, 14 targets, 11 catches for 134 yards and a touchdown, and they were hammering him. Like, it seemed every time he touched the ball, it was right before getting like spear tackle by a flying Saints defender. Jordan Addison, we talked about having the catch earlier. He had another one of those plays where like the ball's in his hands and doesn't end up being a score because the guy makes contact and the ground slightly made it come out at the end. But like, this is now 4 or 5 of those plays where, come on, if you just stronger hands, we keep hold of this. We've left multiple touchdowns and several other big plays on the table so far. But, when you consider he's not supposed to be the number 1 receiver in this offense, like clearly he's shown he can be the second guy to Jefferson with TJ Hawkinson there. And then, dude, Josh Dobbs is just so fun to watch right now. There was a play where he like gets out of pressure, stumbles out of the pocket, runs for a bit, and then does like a Mahomesian like dink over the top for a 1st down. I was struck yesterday, like you've got Josh Dobbs out there, Sam Howell, Geno Smith, Jameis being Jameis. Like, I don't know if there's been an era of quarterbacks where the mid-tier are more entertaining and compelling and fun to watch and likable than this group, where it's like, I don't even care if they're good. These guys are just awesome to watch.
Yeah, I mean, that's seeing that a little bit this NFL season.
And Dobbs has been pretty good.
Yeah. Look, we complimented him last week. Dobbs has been impressive, man. It's a good story, not just because he's, running the offense, but like you said, he's making plays. And now you have a Vikings team, hottest in the league. They're going to be going to Denver for Sunday Night Football next week. They're 6-4, won 5 straight. Dobbs has shown that he can run this offense. Justin Jefferson's coming back at some point.
And
right? Maybe next week.
Their schedule is still soft for a while.
Yes.
I mean, the Denver game, then it's home to Chicago, then it's on the road to Vegas, which, might be tougher than it looked, a few weeks ago in the McDaniels era. Then the one, really tough game on the schedule at Cincinnati, and then 2 out of the last 3 are against Detroit, which is tough, and that will decide the division potentially. But this team at this point has gone from we might finally have a shot at a top 5 draft pick to we should make the playoffs from here.
Yeah, they're 6-4, right on the heels of the 7-2 Detroit Lions.
Yeah, should make the playoffs, and it's basically in our control whether we win the division or not because we have these 2 games against the Lions.
So very impressed with what the Vikings are doing, what Kevin O'Connell's been able to do to keep them afloat, and of course Josh Dobbs running the show there at quarterback. Our other new partner, AG1, we've told you about them for a while now. They're the daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health. We drink it every single day here on the PFF NFL podcast. We gave AG1 a try because we want those nutrients, man. Kick off the day with AG1 and have it with my coffee. It makes me feel unstoppable and ready to take on the day, ready to go like I'm going to, put something good into my body, along with that caffeine to get going here on the early podcast. And I love giving my body the nutrition that it craves, covering all our nutritional bases. All great athletes have one thing in common. They take care of their bodies, and a huge part of that starts with optimizing whole body health. A lot of them also drink AG1, and that's why I'm a huge fan. With every daily serving, I'm setting myself up for success with 75 high-quality ingredients that give me the key daily nutrients that support energy, focus, strength, and clarity. It's this micro habit that delivers macro benefits and helps just about everybody take great care of their health every single day. Just mix 1 small scoop with water, drink it first thing every morning, and you're done. Also love that it costs less than $3 a day. Pretty good if you ask me. It's a really effective daily habit with high-quality sourced ingredients. A win-win for everybody here on the PFF NFL podcast. So if a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/PFF. That's drinkag1.com/PFF. Go check it out right now. All right, the game we thought was the game of the week was not. San Francisco 49ers 34. Jacksonville Jaguars 3. Both teams coming off a bye. Niners looked rejuvenated and like the powerhouse that they were earlier in the season. They break a 3-game losing streak, moving to 6-3 here. Jags fall to 6-3. Really a dominant effort across the board by the 49ers. They had Trent Williams back at left tackle, Deebo Samuel back, and I know Brock Purdy dominated the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football, and I thought that was his best game as a pro. This may have been Brock Purdy's best game as a pro. 19 of 26 for 296, 3 touchdowns, and looked really good throwing the ball.
And it was Purdy that had another one of the back across the body ducks. He's had 3 of them in the last 2 weeks now.
Oh, Ayuk?
Yeah.
The touchdown?
Yeah. He just lofted that way up into the height, he lobbed it into the middle of the end zone.
It was a big-time throw up and away from coverage. It was an incredible throw.
Yeah.
That was a great play by Purdy.
We're
process-oriented, but it's also results-oriented, right?
Oh, I see.
The process is the decision, but, if you make the throw, then it's great. That matters. It's a great throw by Purdy, that touchdown to Ayuk on the scramble drill.
I mean, Tyson Campbell stops running in the direction of the football, and that's the only thing that lets it go over his head.
That's the scouting report. Throw back across Tyson Campbell. He'll stop running.
Anyway, that's the kind of play where if that's picked off by Tyson Campbell, which he's in position to do, you'd be like, this is why. Brett Favre has shown us we don't make this throw. This is why. And previously, last week, he had a couple of those plays. And you're like, how did he get away with that? And then this week, there's a third one. It's like he's in the bag of this, the anti-Brett Favre throw. And then, Jameis. That was the play, anyway, that made me be like, hey, why have we had this current spate of these things? Yeah, Brock Purdy had a great game. Arguably his best in the NFL, as you say. The 49ers pass rush was just wrecking shop. There was a bunch of plays where it seemed like every time Nick Bosa and Chase Young got pressure, it was at the same time. They were Ohio State-style meeting at the quarterback multiple times early in the game. Javon Hargraves getting into the action as well. Wasn't, all the way through the game, but certainly early those guys were a real problem.
Yeah, it was one of those games. Trevor Lawrence was only under pressure for 10 dropbacks. It did feel worse than that, but on those 10 dropbacks, he goes 0 for 4, has 5 sacks. There's a negated play in there as well.
And most of it did come like in the first half. It's like it's like once the game got in control, it sort of eased off, or they got a better handle on it. But like the first half was almost all of that pressure.
So a couple other key plays here. The bomb to Kittle on 2nd and 1, they chuck it up. It ends up was a 75-yard touchdown, whatever. 66-yard touchdown to George Kittle. That was a great throw.
Under pressure.
Under pressure,
yeah.
Right? Tight pocket. And again, the Niners taking a chance. I don't know how much we can reveal from our conversation with Bobby, but he had recently, obviously he knows Kyle and the Niners.
Probably less than you're about to reveal, but
yeah. I'm just saying he had recently just watched Purdy against the Bengals because they're playing Cincinnati. And I guess he basically, he kind of made the suggestion maybe to get out of this little funk, they need to come out chucking it. Is that allowed? Is that too much?
I mean, again,
that's why he's not coming on the show here. Yeah. That's why he's never going to be on the show.
Right. He did point out that he's aware that you revealed more.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't listen to us. He was joking with me. I don't know. It felt like the Niners came out and said, "Let's get this pass game back on track. Let's try to create some shot plays here." And they, especially on 2nd and 1, like I said with Kittle, and it worked. I thought this was early season dominant 49ers, the team that for a stretch looked like the best team in the NFL. Add that to the pass with the pass rush, and they had it all going in this game.
Yeah, no, this was a complete performance. And then, it was closer than the score for a while, and then San Francisco had that monster play where they stripped Christian Kirk in the red zone, return it for what looked like a touchdown. Thomas, was it Avery Thomas? Just an insane play. Like,
what was that final call?
So he strips the ball, recovers it, gets up, like he's on the floor, dives on it. Then was like, I'm free. Jumps up, returns it all the way for a touchdown. They take it off the board, and this is the kind of penalty that if I was a head coach would piss me off more than anything else in the world. They take the touchdown off the board because in celebrating the turnover, the 49ers bench essentially runs onto the field during the return, which is like a penalty. They called it unsportsmanlike or something was the umbrella term that they
that took the touchdown off the board?
So it was a penalty because they did they ran onto the field essentially and obstructed the play as it was happening. You're like, how hard is it to just stay on the sideline?
But also, what's the difference between that and Josh Allen pointing? Because they called that unsportsmanlike, but they didn't take the touchdown off the board,
because this
which I think
ends
is
the
right.
play. Because this, as soon as the sideline bounces on it, it's like the Stanford play,
I got you.
right? It's like the play's done because you've just
fans on the field.
Yeah, you've interfered with the play. Josh Allen is just taunting during the course of a play, which is applied after the play finishes. So, if I was a coach, if this is a close game, can you imagine that being the difference between winning and losing? You morons couldn't stop running 4 yards onto the field? Really? That's one of the dumbest penalties. That was collective. A whole bunch of them did it. Ridiculous. Anyway, huge play by them. Ends up not mattering, obviously, because they ran away with it. But, God, that would have driven me insane if I was a coach.
Yeah, I'd be furious. That would be bad. But like I said, so dominant outing by the Niners. One thing we forgot on the preview show, forgot to think about this. Trayvon Walker for the Jags, him and Josh Allen, because they've got some old school 3-4 elements where they're the two edge rushers, but they'll both drop into coverage 8, 12, 15 times a game between the two of them. And that Kyle Shanahan and the Niners are going to be able to exploit that. And they did that early on. Trayvon Walker in coverage, George Kittle gets behind him for a big game. This was I referenced a couple old Niners-Jags games on the preview show. The one way back in '99 where the Jags won 41-3, just as a joke. But the one where Kyle Shanahan came in and they beat up the 2017 Jags and just dominated from start to finish. That's what this game felt like, where it's like, oh, you've got Trayvon Walker dropping into coverage? All right, that's dumb. Here's George Kittle for a 30-yard gain, whatever it was, 29-yarder. 49ers had answers, and they dominated up front. Chase Young looks like he's going to fit. Pass rush was fierce, like you said, early on. And then from a Jags perspective, I think we just get back to this. They've had games where they just don't show up over the last couple years. They've also bounced back from those, much like the Bengals. But they've had these random games where they don't show up, like training camp. Sometimes they have a great day one day and bad the next, like when we were there. And those are tough to predict here. I also think it still brings into those questions: are the Jags ready to compete with the best teams?
Right. And this is like the Jags and the Lions are effectively the same team in alternate conferences in terms of unexpectedly supposed to be the top team in their division, relative to sort of historical context. Like, they're the team that's now emerging. They want to be contenders. Now the question is, how for real are you? And they're going to go through a series of litmus tests over the course of the season. Both teams have been passing most of them so far, but this is the kind of game, similar like Dallas, same thing, right? Like, San Francisco are one of the teams that is unquestionably the standard, even though they went on a 3-game losing skid. Like, you are going to have to run up against a team like that, and if they beat the crap out of you, it's not a good sign for where you stand relative to true contenders.
Mentioned on the preview show, there was this for the Jags. This game against the Niners, the Bengals, they have a Thursday night game at home. They got the Ravens in a primetime game. Like, those are some of those big tests. They passed the Bills test a few weeks back in London, but this was a rough one for the Jags, for Trevor Lawrence. Like I said, under pressure, fumbles once, a couple picks in there that were kind of weird, but man, just credit the Niners for being back on track.
Yeah, I thought Trayvon Walker had a solid game, actually, even outside of that. Like, he had a couple of plays where he beat Colton McKivitz pretty badly, got a couple of hits on the quarterback. Like,
his power, I mean, he does show off that power and bull rush at times.
You do see there's a few plays, usually a play or two every game, where you're immediately reminded that the guy literally has the best athletic profile of any edge rusher to enter the NFL in the history of the game. Like, sometimes you see these athletic freaks, and it never really shows up in the field. Whatever about the player Walker will or will not become, you do see that at least once or twice every game. We're like, oh yeah,
sure,
yeah, that's why they drafted him number 1 overall. Now
there is also this element of he doesn't get as many opportunities to legitimately just put his hand in the dirt and rush.
Right.
There is a lot of I'm a stand-up linebacker. Am I dropping into coverage? I'm gonna chip the tight end on my way to the quarterback or whatever it might be. He doesn't get as many of those pure opportunities. I don't know if that affects his production a little bit, but yeah. Trayvon Walker remains just intriguing because he went number 1 overall.
Right. I do. So there's a graph posted by the guys at ESPN that had his pass rush win rate basically the same as Aiden Hutchinson's, and there were a few people tweeting at me being like, "Oh, I see, Trayvon Walker's actually really good. Why were you so hard on the kid?"
You should clap back.
Well,
clap back.
The automated pass rush win rate from ESPN has some problems to it, right? Because it's automated. There's a reason you don't let a computer do everything in the world, because much as AI, like that picture that AI created of you and your son, there was some flaws in that picture. Because AI, good as it is, has some blind spots.
I forgot to send that to Kelly.
And we don't allow AI to do everything in the world because sometimes people know better than machines, right? The ESPN automated pass rush win rate thing has some issues. They've talked about themselves, because it's done by proximity. It's automated by proximity and essentially angles of bodies, and therefore the computer determines whether or not this was pressure. But that means it is generous to certain types of plays, amongst them guys that are driven beyond the quarterback but are quite close to the quarterback while it's happening, right? So if you're a quarterback, you drop back, you're looking downfield, and a guy right behind you is, reaching out to get the ball but doesn't get there. That's not pressure. You are literally unaware that it's happening, and as long as your tackle maintains that block and keeps moving him past you, You didn't affect the play at all. You were literally, you were completely unaffected. To us, with a human analyzing this, looking at that and going, quarterback never feels that. It's never pressure. Tackle's always in control of that block. It's not a pressure. To a computer doing it on proximity, it's pressure. So,
long story short, do not send us those ESPN pressure numbers.
So you get certain guys where you're like, you look at it and you're like, that evens itself out, right? It's a flaw. Everyone's going to get them. Everyone's going to lose them. Then it sorts itself out in the wash. Only it doesn't. So there are certain players that are unusually prone to those types of plays, and those will skew high in ESPN's pass rush win rate metric, and they will be much lower on ours where we look at those plays and say none of those are pressures. So Trayvon Walker apparently is one of those players where he has an unusually high pass rush win rate by them relative to what we get. And I don't think it's outlandish to say if you simply sat down and watched Aiden Hutchinson and Trayvon Walker back-to-back this year, they're not in the same ballpark in pass rush win rate.
Well said, Sam.
Thank you.
Both teams 6-3, Niners and Jags.
Last thing about this game.
Oh, you have more.
Just one last thing. It was pretty funny that in an absolute blowout, that's when Christian McCaffrey's 17 straight games with a touchdown streak ends. It was further funny that at the end of the game, they were desperately trying to force feed Christian McCaffrey a touchdown to keep the streak alive and still couldn't get it to happen. Like they were trying to get him that 18th consecutive game with a touchdown. And
Debo had a touchdown.
Couldn't make it happen. Everyone had a touchdown. Juszczyk had a touchdown.
Yeah.
They interviewed McCaffrey afterwards. Like, yeah, I suck. Everybody except me scored in this game.
34-3. Niners win.
Yeah.
It's a revenge for the 1999 41-3 Jaguars win.
They bided their time well.
Yeah.
And now, strike.
All right, let's go to the 4 o'clock games. Detroit Lions 41. Los Angeles Chargers 38. A 4:05 start for this game, which I was surprised. Like this was the premier game in the 4 o'clock window, and it was like boom, it's starting at 4:05. Unbelievable back and forth game. A lot to unpack here. Lions move to 7-2. Chargers move to 4-5. Lions offense pretty much unstoppable throughout the entire game. Almost 200 yards rushing in the first half alone. Jahmyr Gibbs
177 in the first half, which was the most since 1991 for them.
Yeah.
Early Barry.
Yeah, that was the year that did they win the division that year? They made it to the playoffs. That was their last playoff win. That would be a good game to watch historically. The 91 Cowboys-Lions playoff game, I believe it was.
Which was the year where Barry led the league in rushing and then got like -3 in a playoff game on like 20 carries or something.
It might
insane.
be that game again when Washington won the Super Bowl.
Because that probably wouldn't be a great game to watch. Other than simply to find out how
before
Barry...
that.
Yeah, other than simply to watch a game and find out how Barry carried 15 times for negative yardage or whatever.
Yeah. So there's a lot in this game. It was obviously back and forth with both offenses. Justin Herbert played great for the Chargers as well. Goff played outstanding for the Lions. But they were running like crazy in the first half, including David Montgomery with a 75-yarder. Now, David Montgomery has never really been a big play breakaway threat. He's been a good 15-yard, that's his breakaway run.
You know why he made it?
Why?
Jamison Williams.
Oh, him blocking down the field was unbelievable.
So I've crapped on Jamison Williams a little bit this season, but that dude showed another way to use blazing speed.
That was outstanding.
He gained like 5 yards on a bunch of people and got himself in the way of, I think, Asante Samuel Jr. That's not a touchdown without Jamison. Jamison Williams, like you think, speedster, takes the top off a defense, creates touchdowns out of nothing. He created a touchdown with a block. If Jamison Williams doesn't haul ass and move his 4.3 speed up the sideline ahead of his running back and Asante Samuel Jr., that's a tackle somewhere between the line of scrimmage and the end zone. Jamison Williams turns that play into a touchdown with a block that, frankly, he didn't have to make, Like a lot of the guys would not have gone out of their way to sprint full speed and make that block. He did that. So it wasn't in the pass game where everyone expects it to happen, but kudos. That was a huge play.
I did notice that. I didn't know that's where you were going with that. I did notice that. That was awesome. I mean, full team football there. There's so many fascinating things in this game. So Jahmyr Gibbs is getting a lot of the carries early on, looks so explosive. I mean, he is creating big plays in the pass game and in the run game and looking good. Montgomery, as I mentioned, it just decided to become a big play threat as well. So the run game was going nuts in the first half. Chargers come out, they're overloading for the run in the second half. Then Jared Goff starts picking them apart, and he was a little bit in the first half anyway. Amon-Ra St. Brown has 8 catches for 156. They're getting their tight ends open, as they always do. Late in the game, dialing up a beautiful seam route to Brock Wright on play action. I mean, Ben Johnson just play call after play call. The Lions, just incredible. But there were so many extremes in this game. There were fourth down decisions to go for it on both sides. The Lions just refused to kick anything and just kept going for it. They went for it on fourth and 5 and ran the ball up the middle and got it. And then came back with a 3rd and 6 run that got it into 4th and inches, and they just kept going for it on 4th down. They got stopped on 4th down one time. Didn't matter. They came back on the next drive, went for it on 4th down, got into the end zone. This was, every now and again, it feels like the futuristic game where we're just never going to punt, we're never going to kick, both teams, and it's mostly going to work, and we're going to score a ton of points. But that was the way the Lions were so aggressive. And then just really quick to cap it off, the very end of the game, okay? So I don't know if someone else is going to tune in to ESPN shows and Fox shows and everything.
The shouty shows.
The shouty shows. If this failed, and it was a Brandon Staley or it was any other coach, if this decision failed, the shouty shows are going nuts. Okay? But Dan Campbell on 4th and 2 in a tie game with 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter with the field goal range, easy field goal, on 4th and 2, not 4th and inches, goes for it. They convert and then just run the clock out and kick the game-ending field goal. That decision wins the game for the Lions. All of his 4th down decisions added up win the game for the Detroit Lions.
And it's a rare instance where a coach is actually more aggressive than the analytics. Like we talked about the Nick Saban thing, right? And this general approach from coaches of skewing more conservative than the numbers would suggest, and actually they're being dragged to this slowly. I saw at least one model say the right decision is to kick, like not go for it on 4th and 2. Like usually it's presented, the analytics always says go for it. Well, this was one where at least one model said don't. They actually kick the field goal. That's the right play. And instead Campbell is more aggressive than that, picks it up and essentially wins the game with that. This felt like the game that Arthur Smith is always chasing, right? Where it's like, I'm going to always do the last thing that they expect. And the last thing that they expect will leave them just like grasping at straws and having being nowhere. Like Ben Johnson, everything was the opposite of what the Chargers were expecting. They had no clue what was happening at any point in this game. Every single time, they went right, he went left. They went short, he went deep. Like everything was the exact opposite of what they were expecting. And it was working. Now, like Jared Goff had a great game. He hit basically everything that was there. But this felt like a game where Ben Johnson is out coaching the opposition by a mile.
Yeah.
Kellen Moore was doing okay, but like the sort of the titanic struggle was Jared Goff executing the wizardry that Ben Johnson is dialing up, and Justin Herbert delivering seed after seed to like keep them in the game. Some of which were nice plays that were dialed up. The other of which was just like Herbert making some magic happen. Like it felt very much the Lions was a complete effort. Everybody was doing an incredible job, but they were absolutely winning the coaching battle. The other way was a lot closer, I think, between Kellen Moore and the Lions defense.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to, I think, all of the Lions personnel moves. So when we were trying to explain, or when we're analyzing the Jahmyr Gibbs at 12 overall pick during the draft, it's like, okay, too high for a running back. Let's get that out of the way, and now let's talk about what's going to happen on the field. And for weeks, people were saying, well, Gibbs needs more carries. Just got to feed him. And I kept saying, like, just wait a little bit, right? Like, he doesn't need to have 30 carries a game. He doesn't need to have 30 touches. But this was that game where all of the playmakers are difficult to cover for the Lions, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown owns the middle of the field. Good luck covering him. The 2 tight ends, Sam Laporta, Brock Wright, he was, like you said, the afterthought, and it's like they dial up a play to get him open up the seam. Khalif Raymond they dial up his plays in the fourth quarter to get him into space. Jahmyr Gibbs doesn't need to be fed. It's just when it's his turn and it's time for him to get the ball in his hands on sweeps in the pass game, he's going to create big plays. And that's what he's done. And you have to, as a defense, get off blocks and tackle the battering ram of David Montgomery, who now has big playability. You have to handle the battering ram of David Montgomery. You have to handle the explosiveness of Jahmyr Gibbs, the route running of Amon-Ra St. Brown, the explosiveness of Khalif Raymond and Jamison Williams, the tight end mismatch of Sam Laporta. This is the full Lions offense. In addition to the head coach saying, we're better than you on offense. We're going to go for it on fourth down because we trust all of these playmakers that I just cited. We trust our offensive coordinator has good plays to call, and we're just going to keep the pressure on opposing defenses. And so you could criticize Detroit's defense for giving up 38 and being in this position, but offensively, this was like a near perfect game for them. All like the totality of the quarterback play, the running back play, the offensive line, the playmakers, the aggressiveness, unbelievable effort by Detroit from an offensive standpoint.
Did you see Khalil Mack's quotes?
I have the quote. I put it in my document here.
Nice.
Yes.
Go on then.
He says they prepared as a defense for certain things, and the Lions did the opposite.
Yeah.
In 500 yards, that's not acceptable. But not only that, the rushing yards is what pissed me off the most. It's hard to even talk about. One last thing really quick. I remember the Titans a few years ago. They said they were going to run exotic smash mouth offensively, which was like, it's kind of intriguing, right? Like, we're going to run the ball, but in creative ways, and sometimes it's going to be downhill, and sometimes it's going to be wide, and sometimes it's going to be finesse, but it's going to be power. Like, that's the Lions. They are exotic smash mouth. We're going to run the ball in different ways, creative ways, but not because we're just better than you, but like we're going to call the right plays, and as you said, do what the defense is not expecting.
Yeah, but that first line sums it up. Like, the Lions and Ben Johnson on that side of the ball were a step ahead from the outset. Obviously, they came in there specifically to break tendencies and do the opposite of what they'd done before, and the Chargers never got back to being on the same page. Like, they were a step behind from the first play to the last play and never caught up.
Yeah, man. It was really fun to watch. The Chargers, on the other hand, offensively, they hung tough, and Herbert played an outstanding game to get them back in. He had one.
But it was his best game of the year.
It was. One little blip. He tried to throw the ball away and gets picked off by Kirby Joseph along the sideline. Outstanding play by Joseph. Other than that, though, I thought they had their own 4th and 1 where they rolled Herbert out, found Keenan Allen for a long touchdown. My concern with look, Herbert was awesome. Keenan Allen was awesome again. You talk about the best receivers in the NFL this year. Keenan Allen has been so good. The Chargers just feel so fragile.
And they threatened to lose him he went down with a shoulder injury. I was like, if they lose him,
it's like, what are they going to do?
Yeah. And when I was saying, like, Kellen Moore dialed up some good stuff as well. There was the play you mentioned to Keenan Allen, the touchdown to Johnston where they fake a goal line pitch and then just over the top, Johnston's wide open. So it's not like it was all Herbert, but I think there was a greater proportion where like Herbert has to deliver an absolute dime for them to get the production and this thing to keep moving down and match Detroit. Like, Detroit's was far more. The Chargers defense was never anywhere, and Jared Goff just had to keep going, whereas Herbert was doing a lot of the heavy lifting in addition to Kellen Moore dialing up some plays.
The one other thing I wanted to mention, so the Chargers got stopped on 4th down 7 straight times. I'm sorry, on the goal line 7 straight times. They went for it on 4th and goal. There was a penalty, could have been an iffy penalty, but that prolonged the drive. So they got stopped basically on 4 straight plays. Then they had 3 more plays where they got stopped. Like, they were getting stuffed on QB sneaks and the whole deal. And then went for it again. And I think Romo I thought Romo actually had a good game. He was calling. Some of his calls were right. Good game calling what was going to happen. But it was the same thing that happened with Peyton Manning on the Manning cast last year, where you just saw multiple failures in short yardage, and then 4th down comes up, and I think the old school mentality is like, okay, well, we just didn't get it in the end zone 7 straight times. Of course we're going to kick. We can't just go for it again. But the 8th time worked, and the Chargers did go for it, and that was the the play they dialed up to Quentin Johnston for the touchdown. It just brings up, I don't think that previous success or failure matters a whole lot. And I think that's one of the hardest things for coaches to maybe wrap their brain around, where it's like, oh man, we're really struggling in short yardage today. Therefore, we can't, go for it on fourth down in short yardage because we're not having a day. Like, previous failures don't necessarily matter. But those are the types of things that did keep the Chargers in the game. So from that perspective, credit Brandon Staley. Where I don't want to credit Brandon Staley is this is his defense, and they continue to just get absolutely whooped, and they have good personnel. They have good, solid personnel. They've had good, solid personnel over the last few years, and they don't have answers, man. They don't have answers when they go up against the Chiefs. They don't have answers when they go up against the Lions. They have answers when they go up against rookie quarterbacks, maybe, bad offenses. They don't have too many answers on the defensive side of the ball, the Chargers.
No. And we really reached the point, like the end of the line of being able to craft any kind of excuse for that. Like, you are a defensive-minded head coach. The personnel should be there for this defense to be good. We questioned, hey, when like Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack had been killing it in recent weeks, Bosa had been injured early in their season. You're like, is this it? Are they back? Or did they just run up against some pretty bad offensive lines? Well, this game, they run up against a good offensive line, and those guys got pretty much shut down. So even the things that had been working a bit were not good. And as you say, or as I said, they got outcoached, badly outcoached. I mean, they were ill prepared in terms of being prepared for the wrong thing, and then at no point in the game were they ever anything other than a step behind the Lions every step of the way. And okay, Brandon Staley is not the defensive coordinator, he's the head coach. So it's not like it's necessarily directly his responsibility the way it is with Kyle Shanahan, who is literally the offensive coordinator in addition to being the head coach. It's not the same dynamic there. On the other hand, if you're hired as a defensive-minded, you got there's one of two things can happen. If you're a defensive coach hired to be the head coach, either you win a lot of games, in which case nothing matters, right? You know what I mean? Like Tomlin. Nobody cares if Tomlin's defense is doing well. It's the fact that Tomlin keeps getting wins from nowhere, and that's why Tomlin's a good head coach. Or your defense is playing out of its mind like Robert Saleh, and the fact that you're not necessarily winning games can be excused because the offense stinks and it's not 100% your fault, right? Brandon Staley at the moment, neither of those things is happening. The defense is getting blowtorched, and they're not winning enough games for nobody to notice or for nobody to care. It's like, this is a problem, and this is probably only one way that problem stops happening.
And Staley looked like the perfect head coaching hire at the time for that division to beat the Chiefs, right? Like, people didn't know, like, too high is going to slow down the Chiefs a little bit in 2021 before he got hired. But it was the hot scheme. It was the Fangio tree. It was, invite the run and stop the pass. Don't give up any big plays like the 2020 Rams, Staley's team. Looked like a perfect defense to slow down the Chiefs, and the perfect head coach to run the show, and it just hasn't been. Mm-hmm. Just has not been whatsoever. So, Lions 7-2, 41-38 win. Chargers fall to 4-5. Arizona Cardinals 25, Atlanta Falcons 23. This was another one of those walk-off field goal games for the Cardinals. They moved to 2-8. Falcons fall to 4-6. Kyler Murray made his return for the Arizona Cardinals, and it was his scamper. I think when he runs, it's a scamper. Right? The scamper.
Yeah, immediately scampering as well.
He does look like the toddler stealing the cell phone that the scout descriptions had a few years ago.
Did you see they had a revised picture without a wildly disproportionate football in it?
Oh, did they? They're like, let's tilt the angle up a little bit.
They found a different angle for him to hold the ball so that it didn't look so ridiculous. Like we were wondering heading into the game, right? What version of Kyler Murray is this going to be? Are they going to, lean into part of what makes him a potentially special quarterback? Like, immediately he was scampering, and the end of this game, like, that looked like some vintage Oklahoma Kyler Murray, where he was like running around making wild things happen back there.
Yeah.
There were a couple of those plays, like right at the death, he had a play that looked right out of that Oklahoma offense where you're like, how is he even doing this?
3rd and 10, and he finds a way to move the chains.
Yeah.
And then they get further into field goal range with maybe one of his worst throws. He get underthrow down the field where Trey McBride kind of bails him out.
He just went full nuke. Like, I'm going to toss the defender out of my way to grab this.
Yeah, I went through all Murray's, biggest throws or whatever during the game, and there were some weird misses. There were some nice ones, a couple big-time throws in there, some weird misses, and I don't know if it was a timing. Like, he underthrew several passes down the field, and I don't know if that was just a timing vision. Like, usually when people underthrow things, you blame arm strength, but, like, when you throw the ball 25 yards instead of 30, that's not an arm strength thing. That's inaccuracy.
It's also rarely an arm strength thing.
It's very rarely an arm strength thing, right? Unless you're trying to throw the ball 60 and you only get it 45. He was just off throwing the ball down the field, and then very good on some of the intermediate throws. So I think you saw some rust maybe from Kyler Murray, but athletically, you saw him scampering and making plays. Also, a keeper for a touchdown, the scramble to put them into field goal range. Pretty promising, I think, for Kyler's return.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he looks athletically all the way back immediately and is the most important thing. And I think even with this version where it did look a bit rusty, it's still an upgrade over anything they've had this season. Even with Josh Dobbs playing pretty well, I think Kyler Murray at this level is immediately better than that. And, I mean, from his perspective, like this was a good return, and it bodes well for what he can show them for the second half of the season in terms of staying there going forward, which is the big thing. Like, it's not like he needs to win the job, but like, he has the chance to win that job in two different ways. So, number one, prove that he's the guy, and number two, win enough games that they don't have a shot at Caleb Williams anyway. Like, he can do both parts of that, like attack this thing from two different directions. And from their perspective, like, if Kyler Murray wins enough games that they don't have a shot at Drake May and Caleb Williams, then that probably answers the question from them anyway. Like, hey, he is the guy, and by the way, we no longer have a choice in the matter.
I always come back to I'll have so much time this offseason to talk about it, but really quickly, when you put in that balance sheet together, you have Kyler Murray on one side, plus if you have the second, third, fourth pick, everything you might be able to get from a trade, right, or a Marvin Harrison Jr. or whatever, right? Those are the potential things versus what you'd get for Kyler Murray in a trade plus, say, the new quarterback, a Drake May or whatever it might be. I mean, those are intriguing possibilities on either side, I think, for Arizona. But a serious one is keeping Kyler Murray and getting an elite player at the top of the draft.
But I think it's interesting that it's kind of going to take care of itself. Like, you almost don't need to evaluate Kyler Murray. You could kind of judge it by wins and losses and just say, look, if they win enough games that they don't have a shot at that quarterback anyway, he's the guy. If they don't, then maybe he isn't.
Even if he's good, though, there's enough inconsistency in his career that, I don't know, it could be challenging to make that decision. Other side, Falcons, Bijan Robinson found the end zone, which was nice.
Well, Bijan finally got the kind of workload people were demanding. And unfortunately, Atlanta lost the game. So Arthur Smith is the real winner here.
Atlanta is now 0-2 in games in which Bijan Robinson has a rushing touchdown. I'm just pointing out some facts here.
Yeah.
For the fantasy folks. Sorry. Bijan goes 22 carries for 95 yards and a score. Fantasy people are weird. You guys, just because the first touchdown went to Scotty Miller, like, it's just a mesh play.
Yeah,
he's running. It's like, they're feeding Scotty Miller. He's earning all the red zone targets. It's like he just was the receiver running a route who came open on the play. Fantasy people are mad when touchdowns go to the wrong people. Taylor Heineke gets hurt. Desmond Ridder has to come in. Ridder ends up with a touchdown on a keeper as well. That bet's still alive, right? We have somebody waiting for 10 touchdowns for Ridder, one of the bettors.
10 was 10 rushing touchdowns.
Rushing touchdowns. Isn't he like 4 or 5 right now?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. So that bet's still alive with the Heineke injury. We'll see what happens coming out of there. But yeah, Atlanta, I think kind of a disappointing game for their defense these last couple weeks. I've been talking up their defense, and they're not making the key stops late in the game these last few weeks.
No. I was just looking at that touchdown. I was curious because you made this point yesterday that, hey, he's the last read in mesh. It's not like the play was dialed up for Scotty Miller.
Yeah, tell me about it.
This may be true. Having said that, I don't know who was on the field at the time, but the only other receiver I noticed on the field was Van Jefferson. So I went to look at it just on the off chance that his personnel grouping was like Scotty Miller, Van Jefferson, Jonnu Smith, Tyler out, like all of the players that shouldn't be on the field. It wasn't. It was Scotty Miller, Van Jefferson, and then 3 actual players that everybody wants the football: Bijan, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts.
Yeah.
So
like the fantasy analysis, they're like, oh, why is Scotty Miller getting the red zone touches? It's like, that was the play.
yeah.
That was the play. They didn't go in saying we're going to get Scotty on this one.
So
They caught it.
Heineke goes out. Ritter comes in, gets his rushing touchdown. There's basically no difference whether they're playing Taylor Heineke or Desmond Ritter. It's the same guy, and it's not good enough. But that, I don't think that made a particularly big difference to the outcome. It's just what ended up happening.
Back to Arizona really quick. Greg Dortch with a huge punt return to set up what should have been a Michael Wilson touchdown.
How did that?
Go ahead.
I didn't even. So it was
State your case.
a great play by Michael Wilson, right? Catches it, breaks 2 tackles, drags a third guy over the line, and apparently it was down inside the 1. Now, I want to preface this by saying I didn't actually see the replay, but from the live view, I don't see how he could have been down inside the 1. And even if he was, I don't care. I have decided that if I come to power, right, and I will do Rodgers' job for a fraction of the money he's bringing in. What's the man on, like $70 million a year now? I'll do it for 2, right? $2 million a year. I'll be head commissioner of the NFL. I'll take all the crap from the owners. I'm happy with that. $2 million. You save a fortune. One of the first things I would implement is if it's a touchdown, you're no longer allowed to call it down inside the 1. If you called it live on the field and you said touchdown, don't show me a replay that says he was down at the 6-inch line. I don't care. I don't want it to happen anymore. The number of plays yesterday, they were like, but there's a flag on the play. Or, wait, they're talking about this one. No, stop it. That was a great play by Michael Wilson. He broke 3 tackles, or 2.5. It was like a simple out route, and he then dragged the guy into the end zone. It's a touchdown. Stop it. Don't take it away from him. The end.
Then Clayton Tune came in and stole the touchdown.
Yeah. Vote for Sam for commissioner.
I'm with you, man. So no more
Palazzolo for GM. I can get Commissioner Sam.
You just trying to one up me, huh?
Well, I mean, look, I'll find a role for you in the administration.
You
could be the guy. What's his name? Brian Murphy, the guy that has to feed all of my idiot policies to the people. Like the PR guy, right?
No.
The spokesman. That's it. The official NFL spokesman can be Steve Palazzolo.
No thanks.
I'll come up with this idiot scheme, right? Replay is now illegal for touchdowns, and you have to go out there and explain it to everybody.
I just want my 4-year GM contract where I get canned after a year and a half and collect money for the next 2.5, and that's the goal.
The A&M guy was Jimbo Fisher. Is that his name?
Yeah, that's the dream.
$70 million to not coach the team.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
That's what you want.
Yeah, but your ego, man, your reputation.
$70 million, I wouldn't give a rat's ass about my reputation.
Yeah, so it's another reason why passing touchdowns are a quirky stat and not the only thing to look at. Kyler loses a passing touchdown
not that
he earned it the first. But I'm just saying the touchdowns in general are just
Michael
finicky.
Wilson is the guy that got hosed.
Wilson did a really nice job there. Trey McBride playing really well at tight end for Arizona these last few weeks. Had an awesome game again. 8 catches for 131. He has become a weapon. He was probably the top tight end in last year's draft class, but a consensus top tight end, goes in the second round and has been a huge piece of Arizona's offense the last few weeks.
And had been curiously not a factor up until he became a dominant force in the offense. It was slightly strange. I was like, if he hasn't done anything up until now, maybe he wasn't the guy. And then all of a sudden he explodes and it's you see? This is a dude that was his offense in college and then was just doing nothing in the NFL, and suddenly has exploded as being one of the most impactful tight ends in the league.
Ends up being a huge loss, obviously, for the Falcons. They haven't had their bye yet, so they're 4-6. But the difference between 4-6 and 5-5, I mean, that's first place in the NFC South. Arizona moves to 2-8 and creeping up in the draft, or down in the draft. Unfortunately, away from that number 1 overall pick.
More smart game management stuff though at the end of the game for them. They finally get the plays. They have the ball. They're trying to eat it out. They're going to score, and James Conner in particular deliberately did not score multiple times. They specifically, rather than take a touchdown and give Atlanta the chance of having the ball back and being able to answer, they just kept basically hitting the ground. diving and then like late of the walk-off field goal, as you say. So they had a chance to score a touchdown, go up even more, but give the ball back to the opposition, and were smart enough to not take it.
And you're not excited by walk-off field goals.
Not even slightly, no.
No. Because most of the time it's like, we already knew this was going to happen.
I mean, it's a field goal, so who cares?
Yeah, nobody's
like
watching
it's
the
the
field.
win. That's
Just
the
let me know
important part.
after if they hit it.
Yeah.
I'll know the result.
Like a walk-off touchdown is exciting. A walk-off field goal is just the way the game ended.
All right, we got 3 more games to discuss here. Seattle Seahawks 29, Washington Commanders 26. This was an exciting walk-off field goal, wasn't it?
Exciting walk-off.
I mean, the moments leading up to it.
Yeah, that's the
were
thing.
exciting.
It's the moments leading up to it that's the exciting part. It's not the walk-off field goal.
This was a field goal fest for a while. 12-9, Washington was up into the third quarter. Then you have Geno Smith gets the ball into the flat to Kenneth Walker, who takes it 64 yards for a touchdown. Washington comes back. They eventually tie it up at 19. Geno Smith finds Tyler Lockett for a touchdown. They go up 7. This has been, how many Washington games this year? Are they just going back and forth, back and forth? Like, they come back, man. That Sam Howell hits De'Ami Brown for a 35-yarder with about a minute left in the game. What a beautiful touch pass over the linebackers. Hits Brown in stride. He takes it in for a touchdown. They tie it up at 26. But Geno Smith and Seattle come back and do the same thing. DK Metcalf takes over on that final drive. They get into field goal range. And, man, just a beautiful offense in 2-minute situations by both Washington and Seattle. But Seattle pulls it off, 29-26. They move to 6-3 and still sitting atop the NFC West along with the Niners. Yeah,
the quarterbacks traded, game-winning drives. Only obviously the end one is the only one that counts. Like Sam Howell had a performance where he got it done. He drove down. He did his part. He drove down, scored, put them ahead, and then Seattle answered. And somehow, I'm not 100% sure what Washington's defense was doing on that final drive, but it's like just the entire drive was like throws to DK Metcalf, and then the last big play that got them there was just like a simple dig route into zone coverage. It's like, what? This is just a gap in the defense. Why would we not attempt to cover this a little bit more than that?
Yeah.
Like that spot drop stuff we talked about before, that's basically what they ran on that play.
Yeah, it was rough. I mean, so sometimes we talk about how the late game field goal drive is not easy, but it's like more expected than it's ever been. Even with offense down these years, that was kind of the example. I mean, Seattle had about a minute to get into field goal range. You're only talking a couple big plays to get into field goal range, and they did that. Emmanuel Forbes gets booted out of the game due to a head-to-head hit early on, so we were robbed of Emmanuel Forbes at 165 pounds going up against DK Metcalf in this game.
Yeah, I don't know if that would have happened anyway, but
maybe
it ceased to become an option when she was turfed out of the game, which seemed a bit harsh, to be honest.
Yeah, honestly,
it was clearly a penalty, but
I thought they were reviewing if it wasn't a penalty.
No, it was definitely a penalty.
It was helmet to helmet, but I don't know. Those things are close.
It felt like, and I'm not saying I'm not saying he flopped or anything, but it felt like the reaction of Tyler Lockett was what got that.
That's what it always is. That's the problem.
But I don't even think it was an exaggerated reaction. Like I don't think he overdid the thing to sort of sell it and get him ejected.
Agreed.
And what I'm saying is there's just the way that he went to the ground, I think increased the punishment for that.
When plays look bad, they're more likely to get flagged. That's a problem.
But I think it was like the flag part is fine.
It is. I'm just saying generally.
Yeah, that
there was
I think
a play
escalated it to an ejection, which I think is wrong.
There was a play last night, I think in maybe Jets Raiders, where there was the cleanest hit by a safety to a receiver who was kind of unprotected, right? Hit him square in the back over the middle of the field. I'm like, you could say defenseless, and if you hit him harder, it's more likely to get a penalty. If you hit him too hard, or if the guy just has a bad reaction, gets hurt, whatever, you're more likely to get a penalty. That's a problem. Because you get away from letter of the law and you get into look bad, call it a penalty. Anyway, that was my quick stuff.
That play, by the way, it's actually the defense itself wasn't as bad as I thought. It's literally just the two people playing Metcalf do a terrible job. Like everyone else actually does a pretty good job of locking their guy down. And St-Juste just lets him go inside, and the safety doesn't drive on it. It's an easy pitch and catch.
Geno Smith had, I thought he had a good game where he had been turning the ball over for a while, but we talked about Howell throwing the ball over the backers, and Geno Smith had a couple of those throws. What was the go-ahead touchdown to Tyler Lockett? They roll him out. He puts it down and away from coverage. That was a beautiful throw. Geno Smith had a really good, clean game, and he's had some of the late-game magic over these last few weeks as well. So Seattle, hanging tough here, and Sam Howell remains very intriguing on the other side for Washington because I think he did his part as well, and he continues to not get sacked too much. So
that's what I was
improvements
gonna
being
bring
made
up.
here.
So he does. He continues to do his part. He continues this trend of being sacked slightly less than before. Like, he's no longer – he might actually still be on pace for the worst ever, but he's no longer getting sacked at that rate. This was a game where he was under pressure a lot. The Washington offensive line did not do a good job in this game. Like, we've talked before about – the line actually over the season is not catastrophic, but it looks terrible because of Sam Howell. This was a game where the line actually got its ass kicked, by and large. Like, multiple players on that line had bad games and were giving up a lot of pressure. And Sam Howell was under pressure quite a lot and, quote-unquote, only got sacked 3 times. I mean, this was a game where if this happened in week 2, he would have been sacked like 7 or 8 times. And we would be like, this can't function like this. He didn't. He only got sacked 3 times. Now, that's still not great, but it is a big step in the right direction. And
when you drop back almost 50 times again.
Right. And that is his single biggest flaw. So there is now multiple weeks worth of evidence that his single biggest flaw has moved in the right direction, which is a huge thing for like whether he can be like an actual, real, legitimately good quarterback going forward, because a lot of other stuff is there. There are big-time throws in this game. Okay, he had one bad turnover-type play where he fired it at a safety right down the middle. But that's his biggest flaw, the sack thing. And he didn't, this wasn't bad, and the opportunity was there for it to be bad.
Even the first touchdown, I mean, I don't know if it was the O-line that blew it or if he blew the protection necessarily, but he just avoids Jamal Adams, doesn't get sacked, and flips it out to Brian Robinson for a 51-yard touchdown. So, there's a lot of good stuff in there from Sam Howell, again, even in the losing effort. One other thing from a Seattle perspective, getting Jackson Smith and Jigba into the mix here these last few weeks, 4 catches, 53 yards. Initially, at the beginning of the season, that was the idea, right? If DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett stay healthy, Smith and Jigba becomes the 3, and they're full go now. Then you have Ken Walker and then Zach Charbonnet coming out of the backfield. And one of the funniest plays of this game was Charbonnet on that final drive when they're trying to conserve time, under a minute, and he just runs right through a dude, imposing his will. And he gets up and he's like, "Oh, my bad. I should have ran out of bounds." But it was kind of funny. But the thing I say all the time about offenses, where I don't know if it's really harder on defenses, but it feels like it, when you have a battering ram running back, a running back like a Ken Walker, who you never know what gap he's going to hit, but he's got some big playability and he's tough to tackle. A monster in DK Metcalf, an elite route runner and catch point guy like Tyler Lockett, a nice slot route runner like Smith and Jigba. They've got all these different types of playmakers that I think is going to make it challenging on defense while they're all healthy. So I feel like we saw that, especially in the second half here from Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, the trio of wide receivers, that duo of running backs, I mean, they have a lot to work with now. It's not even a thunder and lightning combination, just 2 very good running backs, both making plays.
As I said, Seattle 6-3 now. Commanders fall to 4-6. I'm going to set a timer for 3 minutes. We have 3 minutes to discuss Dallas Cowboys 49, New York Giants 17.
Okay.
Ready, go.
CeeDee Lamb was fantastic. The Cowboys offense generally was fantastic, other than one silly Dak interception, which was the only way that the Giants could possibly stay in this game, was if Dak Prescott melted down the way Josh Allen did in week 1. So on the one hand, bad that he had the mistake. On the other hand, good that it was the only real big mistake.
Yeah, because the Giants made a goal line stand early on, and I'm like, Giants are hanging tough. And before you know it, you look up and you pointed out to me, I knew it was 28-0, but I didn't realize the Giants had 27 yards at the time.
Yeah.
So Dallas had
more points than the Giants had offensive yards.
And then it actually got worse.
At the half.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then it got worse. The Giants had fewer yards because they got sacked on back-to-back plays. Tommy DeVito had, his first NFL start, goes 14 of 27 for 86 yards, including 5 sacks for negative 25 in there. Did throw a couple touchdowns and run for 41 yards, but
mostly in garbage time, yeah.
We talked about it. It was a 16.5-point spread when we recorded last week. Dallas feels like the type of team that dominates these games, and they did. Notable for me, you mentioned Dak's interception because you're a hater. He was pristine other than that. It's one of the best games we've ever seen from Dak Prescott, maybe the best, throw for throw, maybe the best game of the season from any quarterback. Official stat line was 26 of 35 for 404 and 4 touchdowns in that pick. But, man, big-time throws down the field, precision down the field. We'll see what the review says there. But and this was a game where Brandon Cooks, like all year waiting for Brandon Cooks, he goes 9 catches for $173. That's over half of his receiving yards this year came in this game. I know it's the Giants, but, man, if Brandon Cooks becomes the guy that he'd been for the last 10 years or so, that's huge for Dallas.
No, it is. Yeah, look, the big thing for Dak was not allowing that one interception to become a problem in the game. Like, it was silly because it's literally the only way the Giants could have any shot in this game is if you turn the ball over to them a bunch of times. And doing that early in the game was a pretty big mistake. But then not letting it become any kind of factor and just stomping on them was huge. The other thing is, obviously the star of this game was Tommy DeVito's dad.
Yes.
That
absolutely.
man should have received the Taylor Swift treatment where, like, every play we're cutting back to the picture of Tommy DeVito's dad to see what his take was on it. He's the only human that I can remember, when you lip read, you could lip read his accent. There was one play where they have the lip reading and he's like, that's your 4th down play, and you could feel the accent coming off the film. It was amazing. So camera on him at all times.
Yeah, I agree. That'd be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
When I think it was probably around 93 or 94, I was at my uncle's house watching just, some Sunday afternoon football, and Bubby Brister was the quarterback for the Steelers. He was filling in.
Uh-huh.
And my uncle was screaming at the TV because they just kept showing Bubby Brister's parents the entire game.
Right.
And I'd love to find this game. If anybody, I gotta search it, the Bubby Brister parent game, because my uncle was like so mad, and they must have shown his parents like 15 times. He's like, I don't care about Bubby Brister's parents. I don't care. But we need more. If it's the right parents, they should get more screen time.
Can you do a good New York accent?
No, not at all. No,
Okay.
It's not close to Boston.
No, I know.
So
but
no,
you're not a bad mimic. You're not a bad impersonator.
Give me some time. I'd have to work.
I'm trying to find the actual tape for you, so you can put your voice to his movement.
No, well, maybe for the Wednesday show.
For the Wednesday show.
But Dallas dominated. The Giants looked like a bad football team, and it was 49-17.
Yeah. Pretty conclusive stomping, as you say, and as Ross Tucker from the Ross Tucker Football Podcast says, Dallas stomps bad teams better than anybody.
They really do. I was thinking about it yesterday. In 9 games, Dallas has played 3 entertaining games for non-Cowboys fans, basically. Lost to the Eagles was entertaining. The Chargers game on Monday Night Football, and then maybe losing to the Cardinals. There's like a little drama there. Everything else has been a beatdown in either direction.
Yeah.
All right, I've had enough of that game. Cowboys move to 6-3. Giants fall to 2-8, battling for that top pick again. All right, Sunday Night Football. Las Vegas Raiders 16, New York Jets 12. Jets got up early, kicked a bunch of field goals. They had 9 points, or almost right off the bat. I had to make a quick run. I had to jump into the car so I was listening to the game for, about a couple plays or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the stat points scored. Like, it used to just be kicker points, you get 3, touchdowns, you get 6. I can never look at the stat. I tell you how I don't look at normal stats.
Yeah.
But they cited it on the
Including the points in the game?
no, like this kicker has 48 points on the year, right? Like when you're a kid, like they'd show passing, rushing, receiving, and scoring, right?
I thought this was a weird way of telling me you didn't know what the score was.
No, I knew the score. I'm saying like season points, but they cited a stat that like Greg Zuerlein has like 71, 72 points on the season, and the next closest Jet is Breece Hall with 18.
Yeah.
In other words, all their points are coming from field goals.
Yeah.
Which is
well, they have a historically wretched red zone offense at the moment. They're actually, it's not like they're moving the ball well, but they're moving the ball a lot better than their production would indicate, because every time they get to the red zone, they completely crap out.
Well, yeah, I was thinking that there's not that Zach Wilson has good stats or anything, but there's definitely some games where I'm like, man, he played horribly, and then you look at the stat line and it's not near like it. The stats are way better than it felt.
Right.
There was a point in this game before he threw the pick where that was the case.
I started feeling sorry for him when he threw the pick. Remember early in the season where he had that quite good game, the one that Chris was lauding him for, and then he threw the interception it's like, and he came to the sideline and he was like, it's my fault. And you're like, yeah. I mean, I'm bummed for you, but it is like that. It is your fault. You did a lot of good in this game, and you still found a way to undo it and throw the interception and cost yourself the game. In this game, okay, it's not like he played great, but particularly late, he had a few plays that were really nice. He had one play in particular that I posted where it belonged. It would not be out of place if you inserted it into a Patrick Mahomes highlight reel.
Yeah.
He manipulated the pocket. He found space. He then leaned around a guy and sidearm fired it accurately in a no-look pass to hit a guy running across the middle. You're like, there's no difference between that and a classic Patrick Mahomes play. And he had a couple of really nice plays in that game. Even the final, not demi Hail Mary.
That was an impressive play. That was actually a fun Hail Mary to watch, both sides.
So he got out of that. That looked dead. Immediately, the Raiders get some pressure on him. You're like, oh, forget it. The game over. He's rolling to the wrong side. You're like, not a chance Zach Wilson makes this play. He not only evades the pressure, he throws a little move on, was it Max Crosby, I assume, chasing him down? Throws a little move on Crosby to get away from him and buy him just enough time to be able to kind of set his feet and get the ball where it needed to go. And he put it in the end zone, and two different Jets had the best chance at it, and they kind of took it away from each other. But, he had multiple plays where he actually did a really good job, and yet you also had the big turnover, and that's the reason you lost the game.
Yeah, it did. I mean, he had a no-look pass in there as well. In addition to
the other no-look pass? This was...
The one you said was, so there was a scramble left Hail Mary. There was another scramble left or right, whatever. There was a scramble pass down the field.
Yeah.
And then there was just a no-look, 8-10 yarder.
That's the one I was talking about.
Oh,
where
okay.
he manipulates the pocket, then sort of gets his way out of a guy that's in his way, fires it sidearm around him, but no-look sidearm.
Oh, so the other one I was thinking, I thought you were talking about the one where it was, so he had multiple good plays.
That's what I'm saying. There was
another
one
where he got the ball down the field on the final drive.
Yeah.
Before
there were
second.
There was at least 3, maybe 4 very, very high-level Zach Wilson plays in this game.
But
the kind of plays.
The struggle was, Dalvin Cook's wide open in the flat, and he airmails him.
Right. But
or he misreads the stick and throws the interception.
But a lot of his career, this would have made sense as his career, right? Where a guy whose highlight reel at BYU was littered with insane plays, and the question was, what happens when he's under more pressure and yada, yada. This would make sense if this was his career, where it's there's a bunch of really, really good plays and then a critical mistake and some misses and et cetera. But we haven't even seen this from his career. It's just been bad, everywhere. There haven't even been the crazy flashes of brilliance in there. It's just been he's not good. This game, he had the flashes of brilliance. He made some really good plays and then still just found one awful, terrible play that rendered him bad.
Yeah.
So I kind of felt sad for him then, that he made enough plays. He made the 3 or 4 brilliant plays that kind of deserved to win a game that was bad across the board, and then he found the way to undo it with one terrible mistake.
Well, it's uncomfortable. I mean, it's an uncomfortable watch. It's ugly on both sides. I mean, Aiden O'Connell had his rookie issues as well because he got up against the Jets defense. But it's in like the intrigue for me is like, okay, will he ever learn the easy stuff? Like the easy stuff has always seemed to be an issue for Wilson, and it's funny because when you hear them talk like through Aaron Rodgers, it's like the kid's just overthinking things, and it almost feels like the way he plays, it's the opposite. Like he's not just doing the simple stuff; he's actually overthinking it rather than just like, hey, it's wide open in the flat, just hit it. So yeah, I don't know. It was a rough game for Zach Wilson. Early on, he looked sharp. Dove for a touchdown that was negated, or he stepped out at the 3 or whatever. It looked like Mr. Sunday Night here, this is what he did a couple weeks ago against the Chiefs, and he's going to play well in prime time. But
even that, such an unforced error. Like he stepped out when he didn't have to. Like if he just puts his foot an inch to the left, that's a touchdown, and it's a great play. But he didn't. Man, you're such a hater. Credit the Raiders defense, though. I mean, for whatever Zach Wilson did. Robert Spillane, who Chris kept mentioning, is going to be the linchpin for this Raiders defense. The defensive rebuild per former linebacker Antonio Pierce is going to be through linebacker Robert Spillane. And you mocked that. And then
listen, there's certain things I say off air, off the record, that aren't supposed to bring it to the show.
If you can violate on and off the record protocol with PFF Bobby, I can do it for your hating.
All I said is Bobby said they should chuck the ball a little bit. They should pass.
Well, all you said was that you'd fire Antonio Pierce on the spot if he told you that Robert Spillane was the man he was going to build his defense around.
I am a Robert Spillane fan. There was a period of 3 or 4 games in Pittsburgh where he was their best linebacker by far, and they wouldn't put him on the field.
Yeah.
Robert Spillane fan. However, when Chris said that Antonio Pierce said that he's going to build his team around Robert Spillane and Josh Jacobs, I have my doubts.
Yeah.
That's all. I mean, is that a fireable offense? No, because Spillane had the game-ending interception, and I was proven wrong. So
maybe it could be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Like if Josh McDaniels had said that at the end, maybe that would be the thing.
Get out of my office right now.
Right.
That is a ridiculous statement.
Maybe that would be the thing that makes me make the decision. I was on the fence before this conversation, but now you said that, we're done. Get out of here and don't come back.
It's so funny when you hear the fallout of the guy. They were saying, well, Josh Jacobs, they were asking Josh Jacobs which runs he wants.
Yeah.
And it was like the good old days when John Gruden was there.
Right.
They were loving it.
We got input from the players about what they would want to do in the game, and it turns out it's a miraculous impact. The other thing, remember a couple of weeks ago where the Rams watched their star quarterback injure his thumb and then dialed up a Philly special for him?
Yes.
This game, Garrett Wilson gets hurt, goes to the sideline. We watch him from the sideline for 10 minutes getting worked on with his elbow. The medical staff is pulling on it, trying to figure out what's wrong with it. They put a heating sleeve on it. They work on this elbow for 10 minutes. Obviously, visibly, we focus on this. And they then call a wide receiver pass with Garrett Wilson throwing the football with his injured elbow and flutters it off the field. And you're like,
and it was open.
Yeah.
There was a touchdown to be had there.
It's like, why didn't we just dial this up for the guy who spent 10 minutes getting his injured throwing elbow worked on?
You're not on the sideline. You don't know if the left guard's getting whooped. You don't know this analytics.
And these are the same people who are like, nah, you see, you can't trust the numbers because the numbers can't take into effect the hundreds of things that come up in the course of a game.
Man, you don't know.
You just watched your star wide receiver have a doctor working on his throwing elbow for 10 minutes and then decided that the solution was to have him fire the football with that throwing arm.
Yeah.
That feels like an error in coaching judgment to me.
It was the next call on the sheet. We've got some examples. I'll say the game winner, though, Aiden O'Connell, rookie to rookie, Aiden O'Connell to Michael Mayer.
Yeah,
the game winner.
Great play
Beautiful
by Mayer.
throw, up and away from coverage. Nice play by Mayer, and it was the only touchdown in the game.
Mm-hmm. And then for the second week in a row, I mean, Josh Jacobs, we are just feeding the guy carries, and apparently carries that he wants to have, as opposed to whatever the hell Josh.
It's the plays he
McDaniels
liked,
was dialing up,
which was good,
and they're working now.
I mean, Raiders defense playing well. There's something to it, I guess. I mean, if we always joke about you don't want to run the ball too much, but when you have a rookie quarterback, you also Aiden O'Connell kept taking sacks, falling out of field goal range. I mean, 2-yard runs are better than taking sacks. So you're at that point where grinding the ball out with Josh Jacobs ends up becoming a pretty good play here.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those ones where we talk in very simple terms sometimes about, the average pass is better than the average run, so most teams should be passing more than they're throwing, or more than they're running. This is a game where, dude, that Jets defense, that Jets pass rush against a rookie quarterback in Aiden O'Connell, who has previously melted down in one of his 2, NFL starts against teams that can do that kind of thing. Dude, run the ball all day. They're not scoring, so it's not like you have to keep pace with an offense that's doing anything special. Run the damn ball and just don't, because the average result in a passing situation for that could well have been significantly worse than even a not particularly productive run game.
So the grinded out win here for the Raiders. And either way, I mean, Antonio Pierce, I was joking about him and Spillane and Josh Jacobs. He's got them playing hard, second week in a row. Let's also not completely overreact. They beat the Giants and the Jets the last couple weeks. But, turning things around a little bit.
And it actually was, by the way, by the numbers. Their average EPA per play on pass plays was significantly worse than their average EPA on run plays. So,
game flow wise,
intuitively, from the Raiders' perspective, it made sense to run the ball, and actually statistically, it made sense as well.
Again, against this Jets, I think some people picked up my line from the preview show where I said, the Jets defense basically makes every offense look like a Zach Wilson-led offense, the Jets offense. That is the truth. I mean, throwing the ball against this Jets defense is really difficult, and it came down to keep it close, make one big play to Michael Mayer in the end zone, and that ends up being the difference. And again, I would say, Zach Wilson, some struggles there, but credit this Raiders defense who remained feisty all year.
Yeah. Malcolm
Kuntz had a nice strip sack in there. He's really rushed the passer well opposite Max Crosby. They've done a nice job on that side of the ball relative to, I think, what the talent that they have on that side.
Mm-hmm.
So Raiders move to 5-5. Jets fall to 4-5.
Big blow for their, playoff hopes alive for Aaron Rodgers' mid-December return.
Mid-December was the thing that they reported, right?
That's what
he wants
said,
to try to come back.
Now I think he said that in very, that's our target. It's very optimistic, and let's see how it goes type of terms.
Yeah. Well, what was Cam Akers? He came back by January.
It was like a 9-month recovery, right? It was
his was 9. Yeah, because it was the end of the previous season.
Yeah.
Or whatever it was.
Him recovering.
It was in training camp. I'm not training camp.
He recovered in an off season. So him recovering in a full off
what Rodgers is trying to do is insane.
Yes. So Cam Akers
relative to other
recovering in the space of an off season was seen as insane because it's usually a full year. What Rodgers is trying to recover within the course of the same season at the age of 40 or whatever.
Yeah, behind this offensive line, who, like I said, not a Zach Wilson excuse or anything like that, but I don't know. Aaron Rodgers might struggle a little bit behind this makeshift line.
Yeah.
All right, man. That's it. We got Monday Night Football tonight, Broncos and Bills. I think we hit every game. Did we forget anybody? Get the Titans game in there? Yep.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't care if we forgot it this week. But it's an historic week of NFL football, all in the books, in under 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Historic. 5 walk-off field goals. That's the real story.
You'll be back here tomorrow breaking down Monday Night Football, talking some draft with Trevor. But we appreciate everybody for tuning in. I'll see you again on Wednesday, the PFF NFL Podcast.